And one right there to Neighbors, comes in 2-on-1 with Buchnevich. Neighbors to the goal, he scores! Jake Neighbors put it on his backhand and sneaks it inside the post. In behind the net to the corner now to Buchnevich. Walks it in front to Thomas, he scores! Quick answer for the Blues, power play goal, Robert Thomas ties the game 2-2.
There's a belief in that room right now about what we can achieve.
Look out, Perico falls on his butt. Up ice, in, more, to the goal. Save, Binnington!
That's just his ability to rise in big moments is always what describes him best, as why he's special.
Neighbors will be the first one in. Slowly brings it in on Kemper. 5-hole score! Here's Thomas carrying it in. Goes wide left. Cuts in top of the far circle. Shoots, score! Bring out the Zamboni. An overtime win for the Blues tonight. 2 big points and back to within 1 of a playoff spot.
I just love the fact that, we dropped a game. First one we've dropped since we've come back, and we went right back to who we are. We played right to our identity, and that's a credit to the dressing room and the leaders in the dressing room.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, it's time.
No.
It is time, ladies and gentlemen.
No, God, please, no.
Yep.
No.
It's time for the conductor hat.
I swear, BK, if this team goes into a down spiral because of your BKO, it will be Ferrario and friends.
Dude, what a beautiful game that was last night. Did you guys feel like you were watching playoff hockey? Because I felt like I was watching playoff hockey.
Yep, 100%. For how tight that was. Yep.
This is fun to watch. This is what sports are supposed to be about. Dude, we hated this team. A month ago, we hated this team. We were ready for the core to be traded, get Braden Shin up out of here. Half of us were ready to give up on the Robert Thomas as the #1 centerman idea. It just wasn't working. 3 straight years, the same problems, and now, it's only 11 games, but I'll be damned, that's 1/7 of the season, basically.
Well, and a month ago, we were asking for an 11-game stretch like they just put together.
Totally. I can't believe this is where we've arrived, but we're here. The Blues look like a top 5 team in the Western Conference right now. And I don't say that haphazardly. Over their last stretch of games, and I think it's the last 11 games, you've played against the Oilers, Jets, Avs, Capitals, now the Kings twice since the start of February. That includes the Four Nations face-off break as well. These aren't just decent teams. These are legit Stanley Cup contenders that you're going up against. And Alex, I would make a pretty strong argument. You've looked like the better team in every single one of those games. It's not just you're getting lucky. You look better.
Yep.
Last night, the forecheck was there. Broberg getting up on his horse. Hot damn, Jordan Binnington looks amazing right now. It just looks, feels, smells like a contender right now.
Smells like a hockey team.
So... we are basically at the deadline for the Blues, for all intents and purposes, right? They're at the deadline. There is no more hockey that you'll see played. This is the team that you've got. And I don't know how you guys are feeling. There ain't no way in hell I'm selling from this team.
Hell no.
They have convinced me with their play on the ice that at a minimum, they deserve to see this thing through. I don't know where it's going. I don't know if this is a team that can do anything when they get into the playoffs, if they even can get into the playoffs. I don't know. But I do know that they have earned the opportunity to see it through. So at a minimum, you got to stand pat. You got to hold on to what you've got, unless you just are completely blown away, but I don't see it happening. So you stand pat or you add. That's where I'm at with where the Blues have put themselves. They are right there with the playoff mix. Alex, how'd you feel watching it last night? How are you feeling today, seeing what we've witnessed from the Blues in their last 11 games?
I said it on Monday, and I'll say it again, boys. We are back! That's all I can give you for this one. Let me give you some.
I was waiting for another one.
Let me give you some stats for this Blues team. In their last 7 games, 5-1-1, second best point percentage in the National Hockey League. They have scored a total of 3.86 goals per game in the National Hockey League, 6th best in the NHL. They have allowed the 8th fewest goals in the National Hockey League. They have a stretch of 7 consecutive games where they have allowed less than 7 high-danger scoring chances at even strength. Last night there was 11, 5 of them came in 3-on-3 overtime. That doesn't count. Even strength, you've allowed fewer than 7 high-danger scoring chances to your opponent. And then you go individual numbers. Defensively, you've been one of the best defensive cores in the National Hockey League. Your top line has been top 10 in terms of points and plus minus in the National Hockey League since the Four Nations tournament. And T-Bone had this stat last night for us. Take that Dallas relief appearance out for Jordan Binnington, which shouldn't have been a loss for him, but I understand the rules. He's 4-0 since the Four Nations break with a .943 save percentage. Of all goalies in the NHL who have started 4 or more games since the return, he's got the second best save percentage in the National Hockey League. That's better than Connor Hellebuck. Only guy that's better is Tampa Bay Lightning's Andrei Vasilevsky. And it makes sense because he's God mode right now. Everything about this team tells you they're going to make a push for the playoffs. Hear the players talk after the games, talking about the confidence in that locker room.
Can we listen to Jake Neighbors real quick? Let's take a listen. This is him after the game with the broadcast right here on 101 ESPN, talking about how he feels about the team right now.
The excitement on the bench when guys score, when guys are blocking shots, when guys are hitting, it's just a fun energy to be a part of. And, we're playing so hard for each other, and every game feels like a playoff game in our minds, and we're coming with intensity to the rink every day and doing our jobs. And, I haven't had a feeling like this in my career in the NHL with how this team's playing and the way we're clicking right now. And it's so fun, man. You crave feelings like this as a player. You crave to be in games like this as a player, so it's a blast.
Think about that for a minute. Jake Neighbors, who started in the league in the 2021-2022 season, says, I haven't had this feeling since I've been an NHLer. That's where this team is at right now. They feel like they're invincible, and that could be a good thing or that could be a bad thing. Sure. Sometimes it bites you in the rear end, but other times you just instill a confidence in your group. Look at the last few games. Every time they've gotten down, they've scored. They've brought themselves back into the hockey game. They lose a game like they do against the Dallas Stars, where you give up 4 power play goals on 4 chances, on 4 shots. What do? They come back and they go 100% against the LA Kings on the penalty kill, and they win that hockey game.
See who was leading the charge, by the way?
Absolutely.
Pavel Buchnevich.
Yeah.
Last night had an opportunity that I was like, that's him. I was Leo on the couch watching the TV. I was like, I know that guy.
Love Leo.
Hey, that's the guy I said was the best penalty-killing forward that I've seen in a Blues uniform. And he did it. He looked aggressive. And this is what I wanted to get to with you guys. How did it change so fast? Because, again, the Blues a month ago, literally 1 month ago, we were ready to sell everything. Sell the captain, see what you can get for some of these younger players, because the core is just not working. What we're witnessing, it's clearly not what they want it to be. So, Alex, in your mind, how did this all change so fast? From 1 month ago, we're selling everything, to today, I'm wearing my conductor hat, and we're talking about the Blues potentially making a push for the playoffs. And honestly, when they get there, if you put
the hat on, you got to be confident.
When they get there,
come on, man.
I think they'll have a real shot in that first round because of what they're getting right now out of Jordan Binnington. How did this change so fast?
I think a few things. One is health. And it goes to Thomas, it goes to Buchnevich, and it goes to Philip Broberg. Those are 3 guys that I do not believe were 100%. And can even throw Jake Neighbors into this for how he's played since their return.
God dang, dude. He was one of the best players on the ice last night.
Think of who I just mentioned. Your top line and Broberg. And
Broberg was unbelievable.
If you look at Broberg's numbers, man, he's been playing like the number 1 defenseman because they've been limiting the ice time for Colton Parayko. Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich, I think I had this last night, they've put together a total of 26 points in 7 games and are a plus 22, plus 23. So they're a top line right now. So health is a big factor into this. 2 is confidence from your goaltender. And I don't even know if it's just the goaltender. I think it's just the all-around team playing better in front of him. He's allowed to make some of those saves. But last night, how many breakaways did he stop from the Kings?
Dude.
It was unbelievable.
That third period and then overtime as well.
And I shouldn't say unbelievable. That's Binnington. This is the Binnington we all know.
It still is unbelievable to me, dude. Watching it in the moment, especially when Parayko fell on his ass.
Yeah. God.
And by the way, the Jake Neighbors play as well to stop what would have been a breakaway going up against Binnington.
They didn't get a shot on goal on that.
It's just, they're playing connected right now.
The third thing for me, BK, is the month of January is now gone. And what I mean by that is typically, and Joey and I have talked about this in the past, there's a lull in the middle of the season to where guys just are like, God, can we just push through this? And I think Cam even mentioned it last night. Typically, it's January or February. That gets you to the All-Star break. You get a week off, and then players come out of the All-Star break rejuvenated, feeling like it's playoff mode. You know what the Blues were in the month of January? They had a 5-8 record, a .385 point percentage, worse than the National Hockey League. Here are the teams that were right there with them. The LA Kings, not the Seattle Kraken, they stink. The Utah Hockey Club, Vancouver Canucks, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Vegas Golden Knights.
Just go with those first three teams: LA Kings, Vancouver Canucks, Utah Hockey Club. In other words, the Western Conference wild card standings.
Yeah, but I put Tampa and Vegas into this too because we all believe they're cup contenders, right? Yeah. They played less than 500 hockey in January. I think you get through that month, you get the break, and then it's like, okay, we're engaged in playoff mode now.
I do like somebody on the text line brought this up. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. YouTube chat is available for you guys as well. YouTube.com/101 ESPN STL. Good to see the eggplant emoji, bishing about sports, iRock, Gator, all MD 2020. Taylor's over there, Jack's over there, Steven's over there, Bazooka's over there. Got a lot of Cat Dad Gamer over there as well. Of course he is. Got a lot of activity already going on over in the Graveyard chat. Somebody on the text line, though, brought up, guys, don't forget, they got 2 weeks off and they basically had a reset with Jim Montgomery being able to finally implement his plan really for the first time since becoming the Blues head coach. That is something that I do wonder about. Because really, since the moment that he took over, he's been throwing everything together on the fly.
Yeah.
It's been, all right, we've got this condensed schedule in 2024, 25. We're trying to implement as much of our game as we can. And so they're like tweaking things, right? You tweak around the edges as opposed to wholesale changes. It sure looks like there were some wholesale changes that were implemented during this 2-week Four Nations face-off break that allowed them to become the team they wanted to be. Mm-hmm. So if you take that into account, and then you add in 2 weeks of just not playing grueling hockey, so Thomas and Booch and Broberg, maybe Neighbors, can get back to full health, and you've got a goalie that locked himself in because he was playing playoff-style hockey for 2 weeks in the Four Nations face-off, there you go, man. That's really what has been allowed them to raise their game to the next level. Sometimes we make this stuff harder than it needs to be. Your best players have to play like they're your best players. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening for the Blues right now. The top line's been amazing. The top pair defensively has been fantastic. You add in Broberg, who stepped his game up, and your goalie's standing on his head. You get that kind of production out of those guys, everything else starts to fall into place, and now your complementary pieces aren't asked to be the leaders on a night-in, night-out basis. Hey, Zach Bolduc, go out there and have a really nice week stretch. Great. That puts us over the top instead of being what we need to stay afloat. When everything is a trickle-down effect in pro sports, in my opinion. And right now what you're seeing, top line is playing great, top pair's been outstanding, and your number one goalie looks like the number one goalie in the NHL.
To put that into perspective, when Jim Montgomery took over all the way up to the Four Nations break, the Blues had 12 practices. 12 actual practices, not morning skates. They had 5 in the Four Nations break before they came back and returned. So almost half of their practices since Jim Montgomery took over took place in that Four Nations break. Some of this is, yes, Jim Montgomery implementing new schemes. It's also the players investing into it because he can come up with whatever he wants if the players don't want to do it. And I'll add one more to it. It's consistency. Jim Montgomery has not changed the forward line since they've returned from the Four Nations break. He's made one lineup change, and it was Tucker coming out of the game after the Jets one, and Leddy inserted, and Leddy has played every game since. There's been no changes.
I would add, though, there's a reason why there's been no changes. They're playing well.
Yeah. But they're playing well because they can have that consistency and chemistry together.
It's the chicken or the egg, right? I think they were playing well because they're playing better. And that allows them to then continue to stack game on top of game on top of game because of that consistency that you're talking about where they're playing with guys that they're comfortable with. But you have to show me a reason to keep you with your line mates for me to keep you with your line mates. Yeah. And I think for a really long time, especially in that January stretch that you're talking about, Alex, they weren't playing well enough to deserve to play together for an extended stretch of time. I got to get something that gets us going. And that means breaking things apart, seeing what can give us a little bit of a boost. And now you don't have to do that anymore because of so much of the momentum that's taken place.
Yeah, and to the point on like the practices and getting a chance to work on that. I mean, we remember when we talked with Ben Bishop about, hey, like what's Monty want to do? And it's, hey, he's going to like limit the chances, right? That was our whole goal is I look good, partly because I didn't see it a lot to look good. And when you look at the Blues, the 7 games since the Four Nations break, they've held opponents to 30 shots or less on goal.
And high danger-wise, Alex mentioned this. Here's your high danger chances against since that Blackhawks game right before the break. 4-6-5, 6-4, 7-6-5.
Yep.
Yeah.
Before that, 14, 13,
Well,
9,
in the 10
8,
games,
11.
the 10 games prior to the Four Nations, so that final 10-game stretch going into Four Nations, 7 of those 10 games, they gave up 30 or more shots.
There you go.
Just to show you, not just looking at, when you look at high danger, they've cut those out, and they've kept everything to the outside. And even when they've kept it to the outside, they've limited what's actually gotten to Jordan Binnington and Joel Hofer.
Dude, it just looks good right now.
They handed the Kings only their 7th loss on home ice this season. Think about that for a minute.
They're
They're
making 8 on Saturday.
Well, okay, let's not get too excited. But
Sorry,
I
I'm
mean,
in now.
think of the teams that they took down. Winnipeg on the road had been one of the best teams on the power play, and they shut them down. You know, you take on Washington, who was sitting at home in the middle of a 3-game losing streak, and you handed them their 4th. And the Kings were sitting at home in the middle of a 4-game losing streak on home ice, where they haven't lost more than 6 games, and you just handed them a loss.
Thomas Line dominated last night, outchanced the Kings 12-4. High danger chances 5-1 in favor of them. Neighbors looks like a man possessed who's clearing out space at will in front of the net. Kyrou, by the way, a couple of the moves that he had. Booch has that new move that he's been going to regularly
He's new
now.
boot goofing.
He stops, twists into the middle of the ice, and then either finds an open man right in front of the net or puts it on net himself. They look like a playoff team right now, and that brings up the question, what does Doug Armstrong do? With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll talk to Joey Vitale at 11:30. We're talking Jeff Marek at 12:15, Jeremy Rutherford at 1 o'clock. A lot of Blues conversation throughout the day today here on BK and Ferrario. Doug Armstrong is cold-blooded. This dude does not care. He will do what is best for his team, and he's not going to listen to what the public thinks about whether or not what he's doing is right. He's going to do what he believes is the right thing to do. How does he view the stretch that we are all falling for right now? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
I think we've sent the message that, you know, we love each other and we want to find a way in this locker room and build for, you know, right now and the future. And I think the message is there. And but all we can do is focus on what we can control and just do our best job at best every single day.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, that was Jordan Binnington after the game last night talking about the message that he believes the players have sent to the front office leading into this year's NHL trade deadline. Alex, typically what Doug Armstrong says is the players will tell me what to do. It's not my job to make this decision. It's their job to make it for me. Well, the Blues have gone 7-2-2 in their last 11 games. At the time, when they woke up on February 1st, I think everybody and their mother believed that this team was going to be a seller at the trade deadline. And that was understandable. If you disagreed, fair enough. I think you were blinded by the laundry more so than what you were actually witnessing at that point in time. This team in no way, shape, or form looked like a contender. And when you're in this spot that the Blues are in the transition, retool, whatever, you kind of got to get assets whenever you're in that situation. Well, they're no longer in that situation. They're a point out of the playoffs. Yeah, there's some games in hand here, but they're right there with the other teams contending for that final spot in the wild card in the Western Conference. Army's cold-blooded, man. We've seen him do this in the past. It's been teams that are in different situations where they're kind of the back end of a winning window, but he's cold-blooded. He ain't afraid to make a trade that is unpopular even when his team is in this kind of a spot. How do you think he's going to be swayed, if at all, by the stretch that we've just witnessed by the Blues?
I think he's going to be convinced, and I think he's going to look for something that helps this team, but I guarantee he's not going to trade anything that hurts this team. And it's important to understand what I said there, because if we see a trade of a Nick Leddy or a big contract that they're able to move off of, I don't think that hurts this team. And I'm not taking shots at Nick Leddy. I just think what you have is the core in place. And if you can move off of some contracts and insert younger players into that position, like a Tyler Tucker on that third pair, you're in a really good spot. But the team has basically told him, he was on TMA coming out of that Four Nations break, and he told the guys, we need 4 points in that first 2 games against Winnipeg and Colorado. You didn't get it, but you got 3 of 4. But I would almost guarantee you, if you went to that front office and said, did you expect this team to pick up points in 9 of their next 10 games, they would have told you no way. But they did. And now you're hearing neighbors talk about this is the best he's felt since he's been a Blue. You hear Binnington talk about how tight this group is. You can't pull the rug from out from under these guys, because if you do, confidence is shot. So I don't expect Suter to be moved. I don't expect Foxa to be moved. I expect them kind of to acquire something. And what does that look like? You guys remember on Monday when I comped what Jim Montgomery's team is doing to the Stars back in 2018, 2019? At that deadline, the Dallas Stars, mind you, a team that missed the playoffs 2 consecutive years, they traded for Andrew Cogliano, who was a middle 6 forward, and they traded for Matt Zuccarello. They traded a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 5th round draft pick for those guys. They added. So I do think this Blues team is going to go to the deadline and say what's out there that can make us better now and for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be a team that's going out there and getting like Mikko Rantanen. No, I don't think that's on the horizon for the Blues.
I think that's going to be Florida.
I mean, we're going to talk to Jeff Marek coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. Full disclosure, we talked to him a little bit earlier today and made the schedules work for both sides. So we've already had that conversation with him. I can speak about what we talked about. He brought up Luke Shinn's name. It had previously been reported that the Toronto Maple Leafs were trying to acquire both Braden and Luke Schenn. Well, the Blues have Braden Schenn. I don't think they're dealing Braden Schenn to Toronto, so why not do what the Toronto Maple Leafs were planning to do?
This is like when you have one boardwalk in Monopoly, and all you need to get is the other one.
Yeah.
And then you're winning the game.
Yeah, so the Blues are trying to do that. I'm not sure it totally is the exact
it's the same thing. You just got to hope they land on you.
Yeah, sure. That's
fine.
Close enough. That's the kind of thing I could see them doing. You're not going to have to give up a ton for Luke Schenn. He's a 3rd-pair defenseman. But can it help you? Can it solidify your defensive core? Sure. Might make you a little bit better there. Can you go out there and find a 3rd-line center that stabilizes your lineup? Now, I know right now people may be looking at it and saying, but BK, the 3rd line's been great lately. Why are you trying to replace Oscar Sundqvist? And that's fair. I would just say I've seen a lot of Blues hockey this year, and I don't know how long that's going to be able to sustain. And if you can upgrade from Oscar Sundqvist, I don't think that's the worst thing to do at this year's deadline. Those are really the 2 spots that I think make sense for them to add going into this year's deadline.
And to that point, BK, I'm not trying to take Sonny out of the lineup, but I was telling Grant, go ahead.
Real quick, we got a text. I understand it. The guys, Luke Schenn was traded to Pittsburgh. Correct. There's some speculation that he may be traded again. Pittsburgh is not contending, so that's something that still could happen.
Real quick, though, ask yourself, why is Luke Schenn in Pittsburgh? He's not going to be there very long. Pittsburgh's looking for more draft commodity.
I'm not even convinced he's actually in Pittsburgh.
Probably not. He stayed in Nashville, and he's like, I'll go to wherever you're going to trade me next. But before the Four Nations break, the Blues weren't playing Oscar Sundqvist in 2nd game of back-to-backs. They were resting him because they knew the legs weren't there. And I told Grant this last night on postgame. I'm not trying to get rid of Sundqvist because he's a good piece for this team. But what happens in the final 10 games of the season when Sundqvist starts to lose his legs a little bit and you have nothing to replace him?
You got a lot of back-to-backs coming up, too.
And Sundqvist...
Friday, Saturday, next weekend, the weekend after that, a lot of back-to-backs.
And Sundqvist being that extra forward that you can insert when it's bulky or heavy games versus if you bring in somebody that provides a little bit speed. That's not sitting here saying Oscar Sundqvist is a bad player. You're trying to hold on to what Oscar Sundqvist can do best, and you need him rejuvenated, healthy, rested for those stretch runs.
We'll talk a little bit about this with Jeff Marek when he joins us coming up at 12:15. We've got Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic, at 1 o'clock. But coming up next, we're going to talk to Joey Vitale about what he witnessed last night, how he's feeling about the Blues today, and what does he think the Blues should add, if anything, at this year's deadline. Joey Vitale joins us next here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, Blues took down the Kings in a shootout 3-2. They are off today. They'll be back in action tomorrow night when they visit the Anaheim Ducks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 8 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 9 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See him at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, always happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline, coming off of a great stretch of games for the St. Louis Blues, as we're joined by Joey Vitale, Blues analyst for both 101 ESPN and last night, pre and post on FanDuel Sports Midwest. Always great to see him on there. Joey, we appreciate the time as always, my friend. How you doing today?
Joey! Aren't you so glad you didn't go to L.A.?
So glad I'm not in LA. It's windy there, apparently, but no, I'm glad to be home and doing the TV side.
Joe?
I was going to say, you did go outside yesterday when there was snow in March, right?
Yeah, but it's St. Louis. You kind of expect that.
That's
California, I'm thinking everyone's thinking they're going to have sun and it's going to be a great little vacation. Apparently, the wind is howling out there.
Good for you then. Great decision, Joe.
Yeah, good work
Good
by
for
you.
me. You know what? You're right. Good for me. I win one.
Pat yourself on the back, Joey V.
I'm going to do it right now.
There we go.
Right now.
There we go.
Say that.
I don't know if he'd pat himself on the back or clapping, because the Blues deserve a round of applause. Joe, I think we're all loving this right now. 7-2-2 in their last 11 games. Looks like a completely different team from what we saw for the majority of the season. What has stood out to you about the way that the Blues are playing in their last 11 games? Success speaks for itself, but what about the way they're playing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot there. It's really hard to pinpoint one thing, but I'm going to throw out just a few that just the obvious ones, or maybe the not so obvious ones that, to me, what I see. And, I think the number one thing is you have a group of guys that were rested out of that break. I think that we're not going to hear about this to the end of the year, but I truly see that there were a couple of these top players that were dealing with some bumps and bruises that weren't just bumps and bruises. I mean, there were some injuries there with, I'm thinking of a top player on the top six that I've spoken to, where he's been dealing with something that almost kept him out of the lineup on multiple nights. And I think that 2 weeks has really helped him. And he's a player that has really taken off now. And I think people can kind of speculate who I'm talking about. Number one,
Joe, yeah. I feel like we've got an idea on that one.
Yeah, and there's a couple to choose from. But, the reality is, I think that rest really helped some of these players heal through some of the stuff. So the timing of the break was very good. And I think that it's a healthier, not only physically, but mentally. You look at the player, even look at Robert Thomas, who has been dealing with his ups and downs all season long. I think the Four Nations snub, whether he admits it or is not, it was on his mind. He wanted to be a part of that. And then seeing the Canadian team win gold medal, that must have been tough. And he's obviously going through that and dealing with that. And now that that's kind of passed and beyond him, he can kind of really focus on and playing hockey. So I just think it was a really healthy thing for this team and what they needed, number one. Number two, I mentioned this last week, but, Nick Leddy, to me, has been such a steady presence back there, and he's one person. But when you have a player like that, I think everyone now on the back end is playing the exact same style. Tyler Tucker, he's that rugged, physical. I love Tyler Tucker. He's been fighting this year. He's sticking up for teammates. He's an incredible personality. But he has got a style of play. And it's a very direct chip off the glass, like I said, stick up for teammates style of play. With Nick Leddy now replacing Tyler Tucker, I mean, guys, look at every defenseman. They all play the exact same way. I mean, look at Nick Leddy and Ryan Suter. Responsible, they defend, good first pass, get off the ice. Even to the top, Cam Fowler and Colton Parayko. Make a good first pass, get up in the rush, don't overextend yourself, play the same way. And then Justin Falk and Broberg. No one's out there trying to be overly physical. No one's out there trying to be someone they're not. They all just play a good skating game where they move the puck. So as a forward, it's a dream because you don't care who's back there. you know, as a forward, you're always taking inventory. Okay, who's on the back end of the shift? You look behind you. Okay, it's Tyler Tucker. He's got his strengths. He's got his weaknesses. It's Cam Fowler. He's got his strengths. He's got his weaknesses. You look back at the defense right now, and every player plays the exact same way. So it's a dream and it's a luxury for the forwards right now in the St. Louis Blues that they can really get into the rhythm of being a predictable winger or centerman come up the ice, and they know what to expect. So Nick Leddy, to me, has allowed every defenseman to really fall into their spot. And then, of course, every forward is really doing a heck of a job. And, you know, big picture, a head coach that wanted to come in and reestablish things. We knew it wouldn't be overnight, even though they had a lot of early success. They started to float back to their old ways. He stayed on it. He stayed consistent. I'm watching a team that is committed to those habitual things like stopping and starting, sticks on the ice, being on the right side of getting hits or giving hits or taking hits. And when you do those things, you know, it's amazing over time how you start to see a little success, and that success starts to build. So to answer your question, BK, it's very hard to put it on one thing. This is a full group effort that is, not to mention getting great depth, as we've seen that Oscar Sundqvist line continue just to push the pace here. So all cylinders are go for this Blues team. I think before break, I want to say they were like 2-6 kind of heading into that break, something around there. Not great hockey, lost a lot of games heading in. And I think their backs were against the wall. I think they knew that they needed to find some desperation hockey coming out of this break to give themselves a chance. And I think they're just looking to punch people in the face and to really make a big splash, because right now, to me, they're the talk of the NHL. I mean, they moved from they moved from sellers, I think, to potential buyers now. And this is a Blues team that they're a playoff team. I'm watching this team. I'm not just saying it because I'm biased, but this is a playoff-built team. The way they're structured, the way they're physical, the way they have veterans, and not to mention goaltending. So I think every team, like the Winnipeg Jets, or let's look at the Dallas Stars, or, you know, even the Minnesota Wild, whoever kind of finishes in that top two this year, they're not loving what St. Louis is doing right now, because if they can sneak in, that is going to be a very, very tough first round.
Yeah, especially if you're the Winnipeg Jets, for the history of those two teams in the postseason. Joe, because of what you said, what do you think Doug Armstrong is going to do by tomorrow at 2 o'clock?
He's going to add a piece. Yeah, he's going to add a piece. I don't know how big the piece is going to be, but he's going to add. He's loving what he's seeing. I mean, how do you not love what you're seeing? We're not a selling team anymore. I think that we were potentially a selling team before the break, as we were kind of falling more and more back. You know, you lose to Vegas, you lose to Florida, that last minute one. There's been some things you're like, I don't like the way this team's trending. Right now, I think that the team is trending in a fantastic way. I mean, they to me dominated the LA Kings 5-on-5 last night. They were a much better hockey team. That LA Kings team is already in. They will get in. They're not built for playoffs. I'm not sold. I'm not bold on Kevin Fiala leading the way. I'm not sold on an aged Anze Kopitar going the distance, or Drew Doughty going another run where they can win another cup. I just don't see it. And I don't see Darcy Kemper being the goalie. I mean, Binnington and Kemper went head-to-head last night in the shootout. You knew the Blues were going to win if they can get into the shootout, because Binnington's that good. So I compare the Blues to where teams are at. I look at the Calgary Flames. I don't like how the Calgary Flames are built. The Blues have handled them very well this year. Same with the Vancouver Canucks. I know that, you know, Quinn Hughes has his strengths, and I know that, you know, certainly with Elias Pettersson they have some skill, but I just don't know if those personalities are built for what playoff hockey is all about. I mean, I look at the personalities of a Braden Shen or Colton Parayko or Jordan Binnington. Those are the personalities that get you into the playoffs, get you through the playoffs, and there's a lot of champions still now on this hockey team. So to me, that's what really stands out, Alex. And for all those reasons I laid out, and the way this team continues to trend and the style for which they play as looking like a playoff team, this is a general manager that either A, is going to do nothing, or he is going to do B, he is going to add a piece to make him even more competitive because the push is on.
Joey, we're talking to Joey Vitale here on 101 ESPN, Blues analyst for both 101 ESPN and FanDuel Sports Midwest. When you think about adding a piece, we've talked about the most likely spots for that being third-line center and maybe a defenseman. However, you look at those spots right now, and you brought it up earlier. The third line's playing great, and you've seen some positive returns now from that Nick Leddy pairing. Are those still, to you, the spots that you'd be looking to upgrade, despite the recent performances from those areas?
You know, BK, it's a good question. I think the way things are now, I think you leave the defense alone. I don't think you add a defensive piece. I don't think you need it. I really don't. I mean, you look at the veteran presence. There's plenty of experience back there, plenty of playoff hockey, plenty of Stanley Cup champions. Even Ryan Suter, who doesn't have a cup, and like Cam Fowler as well. These guys have over 1,000 games, and to me, it's kind of cool they don't have a cup. Why? because they're hungry. They're extremely hungry, especially for a player like Ryan Suter. So you have that. I love the defense. I love the goaltending, clearly. I mean, there's nothing needs to go there. If you're going to add a piece, you know what? To me, Jake Neighbors, I don't know if he is that top-line guy like they need to go deep into the playoffs. And I love Jake to death. To me, he's a top 6. I don't know if he's a top-line guy with Robert Thomas and Buchnevich. To me, I think Jake is probably at his best in that second or third line role. I think he has done an absolutely amazing job at the role he has been given with Thomas and Buchnevich. Clearly, I mean, another terrific game last night, and people out there probably thinking, what the heck is this guy talking about? Has he gotten into the whiskey cabinet a little bit too soon on this beautiful sunny day here in St. Louis? But, I question the sustainability, because you don't want to put Jake in a position that maybe he is not ready for at this time in his career. I think he's had wonderful spurts. I think he's had a little bit of up and downness throughout the beginning of the season. You saw him on the first line. You saw him on the third line. They were kind of shifting around, moving around. He has been great on that top line spot recently. But the question for Doug Armstrong is, how sustainable is that? And you just hate to put yourself in a position where, man, you need a top line, and maybe Jake isn't quite the guy as consistently as you need. So if it were me, and again, every team is wanting the same thing, you're looking for a top 6 winger that could come in, help the top 6, help with scoring, and that would allow Jake Neighbors to maybe, reduce his minutes by a couple minutes, because I think then he is absolutely at his best, so everyone can kind of fill in that role.
Mikko ranting into the Blues. Joey Vitale says it right here on 101 ESPN.
I heard it.
Exclusive reporting by the former NHL forward. Yeah, not even a pick, just a player
future
to be named
consideration.
Later. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it would be someone with the Carolina Hurricanes hockey ops might have a little bit of an issue there, because for what they gave up to get him and then just lose him just a couple months later, that wouldn't.
It'd be fine.
Someone will be losing their job, but you know what? The Blues fans might be happy.
Absolutely.
Joey, you mentioned getting into the whiskey cabinet a little bit early today. What's your drink of choice when you're sitting around at home? Maybe it's a Friday night. You don't have a Blues game going on. You can make yourself a cocktail for the night. What's your drink of choice?
You know what? I've really laid off the drinking lately. It's just, it doesn't serve me as like it used to. I mean, my God, with all these kids, it just, it's more of a numbing mechanism that you set yourself for failure. But when I like to have fun, and my wife and I love to have fun, I love margaritas. I don't know, especially this time of the year with the sun coming out. My wife makes a great margarita. I love going to Nacho Mamas. Hopefully they're a sponsor of the show. If not, shout out Nacho Mamas. They should be. They have a drive-through. Oh, you're going to love this. So during COVID, I used to go to Nacho Mamas off Manchester, and like my wife and I, the world obviously is coming to an end, as we all know. So we're all just, going to, I'm going to get tacos again. So Nacho Mamas was a drive-through, but they're like one of the few drive-throughs in St. Louis, I think maybe the only one. They actually allow you to take a margarita with the cap on in the drive-through line. Like imagine that. It's crazy. So I used to go, and my wife would be like, hey, it's not Nacho Mama's night. I'm like, it's Nacho Mama's night. Like, what do you want? She's like, you know what I want, big boy? I said, all right, honey, I'm coming back with it. And of course she wanted a margarita. I wanted a margarita. Did I go to the drive-thru and order 4 margaritas and berries 2 on the way home? Yes, I did. Yep. But there's no judgment here. There's no judgment because it's COVID and the world's coming to an end. So I did my margarita thing on the way home. I came home a little bit tipsy. We shared another margarita, and that is my story.
Yeah, and you had your 5th kid.
We had my 5th kid, which of course, that's why we call him Shepherd Margarita Vitale. That's where you got to take
him. Of course. Football player that I covered at Mizzou, his name was Bud Sasser, one of my favorite guys that I covered at the time. His name was Bud, of course, because his parents really liked to drink, and so they named him after Bud
Miller Lite.
That was the go-to.
That is a great reason to name your kid that. Absolutely. Yep. I love that.
Just don't tell him until he gets a little older.
That's right. I asked him one time, I said, Bud, where'd you get your nickname from? He said, well, this is the backstory.
Yeah, you don't want to tell a 5-year-old that. You wait till he's a little older.
Joe, appreciate the time as always, man. We'll certainly be looking forward to tomorrow afternoon's deadline. Hopefully we get some positive news there, and we'll talk it over with you again next week here on the show.
Hey, sounds good, boys. Always a pleasure, and you guys have a great weekend.
Absolutely. See you, buddy. That's Joey Vitale joining us as he does each and every Thursday here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate his time as always. We'll talk more Blues with Jeff Marek at 12:15, and Jeremy Rutherford, our Blues insider, coming up at 1 o'clock. You agree with him? Keep the defensive core as is? upgrade on the forward side of things. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I agree on the upgrade in the forward side of things. I actually would be fine with Tyler Tucker on that third pair defensively because you're trying to move on from a contract. But, I mean, if you can't move him, Nick Luddy is a really good third pair defenseman for you. And frankly, he's right. Luddy plays the same style that Broberg and Falk and Parayko and Fowler do. So you do want to have just chemistry throughout the defensive pairs rather than one guy that doesn't match the rest of them. But I was just going to say, I don't know how you get a top six forward at this deadline.
That's what I was thinking. Like, as I look at this list from The Athletic and I'm trying to find a top six forward that is obviously an upgrade for you. I mean, Brock Besser's on this list. He could fit into that category for you.
I don't know if you're spending for a pending UFA to where you're going to have to pay.
I don't think so. I also am not positive that he's going to get moved. I mean, Vancouver's basically in the same spot as you. I don't know how incentivized they are to move on from a player like that. Scott Lawton is a player that could be moved, but
I don't think he's a top six, and I think he's a third or a fourth liner.
Yeah, on this team, he's a third line center.
Yeah.
He's worse than Braden Shin, and Braden Shin is your second line center, so that doesn't really make sense. I mean, Riley Smith, I guess.
Maybe.
Ryan Donato is a guy that we've talked about. Kyle Palmieri, but is Palmieri an obvious upgrade from what you have right now with Jake Neighbors? I don't know. I'm not sure that there is a clear upgrade on that top line other than Alex Tuck.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we've got trade proposals that I've put together. I have 3 top 6 forwards that could fall into this criteria, and I'll be curious to hear your guys' opinion on the trades and our listeners' opinion on the trades if it's something that could get pulled off.
He's Alex Acebo, and I'm BK. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 314, guys, could you see a scenario where Army moves no players at the deadline and decides to be a third-party facilitator on a deal to acquire picks or prospects in return?
Absolutely. That's another really good move. You're not trading anything away from your team. You're just going to be the middleman to eat. Now, you have to get Tom Stillman's approval on this because he's taking on money for the rest of this year. But, yeah, if you can recoup the second or the third-round pick that you don't have in this upcoming draft, you not only could use that to flip at the deadline, but you could also use that at the draft to go get something if you need all of those picks. So, yeah, that's another option that I could see happen.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to do that anymore. I think, if anything, he's either going to just buy or he's going to sell. And I don't even think he's selling,
T-Bone, just stop for a minute. BK, what are we doing, man?
What's going on? Dude, I'm trying to give a good answer here.
It's not time to feng shui the studio. I can't see with this thing on. You're feng shuiing the studio right now.
I'm trying to tell the people why I don't think Army's going to be a third-tier broker.
It's one blind,
out of the
too.
corner of my eye.
It's blinding me. It's absolutely nice.
Put your conductor hat on then so you can avoid it.
Yeah.
Frustrating,
We've got sunglasses in here somewhere. Where are those red glasses?
Here.
No, actually, I got some blue ones over here.
Yeah,
Put those on.
For the Blues?
Way to steal more content from the fast lane, Brandon.
I couldn't see. Now I really can't see.
T-Bone, go on with your point.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be a third-tier broker anymore because I think when he's looking at this, I think he is just going to focus on, hey, we're going to be a buying team. I don't think he is going to be saying, hey, we'll take some salary, just keep things kind of pat. Maybe he would if he's going to flip that pick at this year's deadline, but I don't think he wants anything thinking for the draft and in the offseason. I think he's looking at the here and now.
Yeah. I would be fine with it. If you're not going to add something and you're going to take on, first of all, it's an ownership decision, really, at the end of the day. But if you're willing to take on a little bit, go for it. It becomes capital that you can use in the offseason to then go continue to upgrade your team. So,
yeah. If I could get a second-round pick to just eat $2 million of salary for this year,
sure.
Yeah, doesn't hurt my team either.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, what do you think it would take if the Blues decided to trade for Rantanen if he was willing to re-sign here?
If he's willing to re-sign?
Probably Kyrou.
Kyrou plus. They would probably want a Kyrou and like a Bolduc. I mean, think of what they gave up to get him. Martin Necas, a top six forward, and a middle six forward, and Jack Drury. Did they put a pick in there?
I thought they did.
There might have been a pick in there as well. So, yeah, if he's willing to sign, you're giving up probably more than what Carolina gave up to get him. If he's not willing to sign, Bolduc, maybe?
Not even a conversation. He's not willing to sign, honestly.
Yeah.
You're not in the
you're not in that market.
Be in the rental category.
It's not happening, so.
Just go for Marner in the offseason when Toronto gets bounced in the first round.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. Guys, regardless of if the Cardinals or Blues end up making it to the playoffs, who do you think will have the bigger offseason in 2025? The Blues starting in July or the Cardinals starting in November?
Blues. Especially if they get to the playoffs, they'll see where they're weakest at, and they'll say, let's go upgrade it. If you get to the playoffs, this would be the moment that Armstrong says, all right, now let's see if we can open this window consistently.
I think I'd say Blues, too. One, it's easier in the cap league of the NHL to make a bigger move like that than in baseball. I don't know what Heim would do. I don't know what to expect from Heim when he takes over, so I would say the Blues.
What would Heim do for you?
Guerrero Jr.
That's not Heim.
Not happening.
Vladimir? No, me neither.
I know they said set aside what happens with the team, but it's really hard to set that aside. Because we're seeing already what the returns have been on the Blues, and so it feels like the Blues could go out there, make a big addition, and then you feel really good about the roster going into next season, right? Like, not just to be a potential playoff contender, but maybe they even take that next jump into real playoff consideration of what can they do when they get there. Whereas with the Cardinals, we're not there yet. Right now, it's a very open-ended question. Are they going to win 70 games or 83 games? Or it's maybe it gets real crazy and they win 86.
Whoa,
like that.
Whoa, you
and
calm
that's
down over there.
Really, like that's what we're seeing right now from the Blues, that kind of an outcome.
I did know Albert Pujols came back to the team.
So that has to influence my decision here. And because of that and where we're at with the Blues, I would say the Blues have the bigger offseason. But if we get to the same point in the Cardinals season, I think it's not hard to see how the Cardinals could be the team that ends up having the bigger offseason because of the trades that could potentially be available to them and the possibility that they have a ton of money to spend.
Yeah.
Like it is not lost on me that if Nolan Arenado is traded next offseason, they would have, even without like getting back to where they were previously, $70 million to spend. And you got to spend it somewhere. So I don't think it's crazy to say that the Cardinals could be the team that has the bigger offseason, but that requires so much to happen between now and then, whereas the Blues, there's not much that needs to happen for them to have a big offseason. All right, he's Alex Ferrario, that is Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to be joined by one of our favorite guests that we have here on the show regularly. That is Jeff Marek. He hosts The Sheet for the Daily Faceoff, does a fantastic job for them, used to be one of the hosts on the 32 Thoughts podcast. That may be where you're familiar with him. Huge Robert Thomas fan, loves the Blues. He's going to talk to us about all of that coming up at 12:15. But coming up next, you've been waiting all week for it. It's time for Alex Ferrario's trade proposals. Are you in or are you out on these trade proposals that he is going to send to me and T-Bone next year on 101 ESPN? Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, we've been looking forward to this all week. Alex faked an illness yesterday to get out of it. He wasn't prepared, so he needed another day to sit at home, do all of the research, and now he has them ready to go for you. It's time for trade proposal season here on BK and Ferrario.
I was actually just resting up for the 9:30 game, so... You know, I was
That's
really,
fair. I didn't go home and take a nap.
Genuinely would not have blamed you if that was the case.
that would be a terrible move on that one.
If you had said in the morning, hey, listen, guys, I just don't think I can do it. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Blues play tonight at 9:30. No, that's not when they're finishing the game. That is when they begin the game. I'd be like, yeah, man, that's cool. We'll take care of it. You come in tomorrow morning.
Grant and I always have like a toast after the 9:30 games are done in the regular season because we know we don't have to withstand that anymore.
Isn't that end at like 12:30?
Yeah, no, I wrapped up postgame at about 1:15. I think the game, because it was a shootout, went until about...
What time did you go to bed last night?
2:30.
Man, you went to bed after me.
I know.
Well, he has to drive home from here.
Yeah, I didn't get home until 1:50, I think, and then it's like you got to shower and kind of shut it down. It's a wild one.
Listen,
so I was toast.
Before we continue this, I know we're not digging ditches here. I hope people understand how freaking hard Alex Ferrario works during the hockey season. Now, all year long, definitely, but especially during the hockey season.
No, you're right, dog. Those 3 months, I don't do much.
That final regular season game, he's done.
I don't know how he does it. I would be miserable every day of my life. The guy has cheaper by the dozen at home.
It's true.
And him and his wife work like opposite schedules. And then this guy is on the air until 1:30 last night, gets home. He's battling through an illness right now. And he's back up here ready to go to pre-record an interview with Jeff Marek today at 9:30. It's unbelievable. But anyways, so Alex Ferrario has his trade proposals ready to go for us today. He had to do those last night as well to have them ready for us today.
Those were done Tuesday before I got sick.
Tell us where you're coming from with these. If you're in Doug Armstrong's shoes, What's the direction we're heading?
This is the direction of buying at the deadline to better your team for the now and for the next couple of years. Essentially, this is the deadline that is opening up the competitive window for Doug Armstrong. Okay. So I tried to do as much research as possible to match up the rumors with these players involved in, the necessity that team absolutely needs a player for, and what the Blues could give up that makes them still a contender. So I'll start with number 1. There's 6 of them, so no Ferrario 5 today. It's the Nashville Predators. We've talked about Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan O'Reilly is coming here. You're bringing him to be a middle 6 centerman for you to help push that playoff stretch down the way. You send Nashville a 2026 third-round draft pick and your prospect that's in the American Hockey League, Alex Santeri-Kaskimaki. You send those to Nashville, and why I brought that up, Nashville wants draft picks for 2026 because Barry Trotz is pretty impacted by the fact that 2025 draft is not very good. You don't have anything, obviously, in 2025 other than the 1st and the 5th, and I'm not giving up a 1st. And Kaskimaki is a middle 6 winger or centerman, however you want to view him, that could play in the NHL next season for Nashville. Plus, he's Finnish, and Barry Trotz loves the Finnish players.
You're getting in for a 2026 third-round pick and a prospect that I don't think is going to figure into the Blues' plans?
Yeah.
Sign me up. Can't tell you how quickly I would do that. Absolutely. If that's what it takes to get Ryan O'Reilly and he plugs in as... I mean, on this team, I know it sounds crazy because of what Ryan O'Reilly's history is here, but he's your third-line center. He's centering the line with Matthew Joseph and Zach Bolduc. Dude, I cannot tell you how quickly I would do that.
Yeah, and just to be 100% upfront with it, Kaskimaki, in the views of a lot of Blues front office and scouts, they view Kaskimaki as a middle 6 winger or middle 6 centerman for them next year for how well he's played in the minor leagues. But we're talking...
I don't.
Yeah, we're talking at best a third-line center.
I got that when he traded him.
At worst, a fourth-line player.
Yeah, and like the truth is, his role is not going to be there because of who you already have on the team.
Right.
He's not beating out Thomas. He's not beating out Dvorsky. He's not beating out Shin. Yeah. He's not beating out Snuggerud. He's not beating out Bolduc. Like on this roster, he may be that for somebody. It just ain't here.
Yeah.
So, I would do this in a heartbeat.
Yep. Okay, next one up. I'm going to the Boston Bruins. This one is a rumor from David Pagnotta on the 4th period. I think it came out yesterday after they traded away Trent Frederick. They said that they're kind of listening to everybody. It's kind of a fire sale in Boston. They're in the middle of a retool. So I'm calling up Boston, and I'm asking for Pavel Zacha. He's a 27-year-old centerman who, when Jim Montgomery was there, he was a 50-plus point performer every single season, and he won 50% of his faceoffs. So he's a legit centerman that I think this year has 11 goals. He comes in, once again, slots into your middle 6, a center spot, and then when Dvorsky's ready to be a centerman for you, then Zacha can move to the wing. So you're trading to Boston your 2025 first-round draft pick. It's top 10 protected, so if you pick in the top 10, it pushes to the 2026 first-round pick, and you're sending them Otto Stenberg. You're sending him the equivalent of 2 first-round picks. But mind you, you're getting a 27-year-old centerman who is locked up for 2 years after this year.
One more year after this year.
One more year after this year. And he's very familiar with the style Jim Montgomery likes to play and has success with it.
Not a good enough player for me to be willing to give up the equivalent of 2 first-round picks. I would much rather do the Ryan O'Reilly deal than this one. If that's the cost for both of them.
Yep. And I don't. That might be too steep. I think Boston's at least going to be sitting.
I like the player.
Yeah.
It really comes down. All of this stuff, like at the deadline, is what's the cost?
Yeah. Well, and I went back and forth with, like, I'm not trading a Bolduc for a Pavel Zacha because that doesn't make my team better. And then in your prospect pool, they don't want a Dean or a Kaskamaki or an Alexandrov because they're probably 2 years away from competing, or 3 years away if this is a retool like the Blues went into. So Stenberg's got a little bit more time to marinate in the minors for them.
Sure.
So out on that one. All right, let's go to the LA Kings. Defenseman Brandt Clark played last night. He was a third-pair defenseman. He's a former 11th overall pick, if I'm not mistaken, by the LA Kings. This is solely a move off of making you good now, but making you better for the next 3 to 5 years, because he's 22 years old. He slots in as a top 4 defenseman moving forward, and he matches the identity of a Broberg, a Parayko, a Fowler, puck-moving defenseman. This is a pretty steep cost, so I'll be curious what you guys' thoughts are. You're sending them, once again, a 2025 first-round pick, which is top 10 protected, and they need scoring right now at the NHL level. You're sending them Zach Bolduc. And you're getting Brandt Clark, who I think is still on an entry-level contract.
It's an RFA next offseason.
So you're going to be paying him.
You got one more year under this, like, basically $1 million salary, and then he becomes an RFA. He's 22 years old. He's a good player, more of an offensive-minded defenseman. This is kind of Broberg-y in terms of the style of player that you're getting. Not as big as Broberg is, but that's a tough one, man. I think you probably... I think this is probably more of an offseason move for me. I think given where the Blues are at right now with their build and how well that third line has been playing, it's probably the kind of conversation I would like to have in July, as opposed to the move that I'm trying to make right now in mid-March. So I would probably say, as of today, no, but let's put a pin in that one. I'm interested in talking to LA again in the offseason.
Any of these spark your fancy, T-Bone?
I like the O'Reilly one. The second one there for Zacha, I wouldn't do. I think it's too much. And then this one, I don't know if I want to remove your depth of scoring like Bolduc right now. I kind of agree with BK. If this was an offseason conversation, I am more intrigued in it than now.
I got one more trade proposal that involves a first-round pick, and then the others involve roster players. I'm calling up the Seattle Kraken. I've mentioned this guy in my Ferrario 5. I'm asking for Jared McCann.
Okay, I'm curious your thoughts on what this is going to cost.
So they're getting rid of everybody. They got rid of Bjorkstrand and Yanni Gord. Those are older players, but they were players with term, and they're probably looking at Jared McCann in the same light. He's 28 years old, and he's only got a couple more years on his contract. He's going to cost you a little bit more if you want to re-sign him.
I like the player.
And he's had a down year. This guy, to me, is a perfect centerman for the now. And next year, if Dvorsky's ready, McCann moves to the wing, and he scored 40 goals with the Seattle Kraken. And this guy's with your team moving forward. You're trading the 2025 first-round pick. Once again, it's a top 10 protected because Seattle needs picks right now. Sure. You're trading next year's third-round pick, and you're trading Nikita Alexandrov.
I don't think that's enough.
Here's why I think it's enough. Seattle doesn't need things now. Seattle knows that Matty Beniers is still young. Seattle knows that Shane Wright is still young. They've got a lot of 23-year-old and younger forwards that are already ready for the NHL, but they still need to develop. I think an Alexandrov to the Seattle Kraken isn't the fancy piece on this. It's the top 10 protected pick. Sure. Because if you're Seattle, I'm looking at the Blues thinking you don't get into the playoffs. I think Calgary's better, Utah, Vancouver. You're probably drafting 14th or 15th overall.
I think I would do this. A first, a third, and then a prospect that Alexandrov just doesn't have a spot on this team.
Well, and why Seattle would be interested in Alexandrov, he is the hottest American Hockey League player right now since his return from injury. So they're looking at it as, hey, this guy could be a middle six winger for us next year.
Yeah, I would do that. I just don't value this first-round pick that much. It's a middle of the first-round pick right now. So if you're giving up this year's first, it's in the middle of the round, I get in return a guy that's $5 million right now. Jared McCann is going to be an absolute steal over the next 2 years at $5 million a year. You've got him under contract for another couple of years. He's in that age range that we've talked about, 25 to 28 years old. He can continue to build with the team. He also allows you some more flexibility in the future. I actually think there's a possibility. Earlier today, Joey told us he would like to see the Blues get somebody that can be on that top line. I think McCann actually could play on that top line on the wing, and it could help you bump Neighbors down to the third line. So I would be curious to see how the Blues view that of, is he better as a third line center bumping Sonny out of the lineup, or are you better off with him going up to that top line and bumping Jake Neighbors down to the third line? I don't know how they would view it. Regardless, I'm interested in the player, and I think this is the kind of cost that I would be willing to do.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in calling Seattle. I think this trade could get it done, and frankly, if you're the Blues, you're in the same mindset I am, BK. I don't care about these picks right now. All right, 2 more roster players. Buffalo. We've seen the rumor mill over these last couple of days. Alex Tuch's name is in there, and Bo Byram's name is in there with Buffalo. Buffalo doesn't want draft picks. Buffalo doesn't want prospects. So I'm calling up Buffalo, and I'm asking for Bo Byram and Alex Tuch. Both of them. Package deal. This is a wild one. I'm trading them Jordan Kyrou, Zach Bolduc, and Theo Lindstein. So they're getting the equivalent of 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick, but they're also getting a legit
I think you could get multiple first-round picks for Kyrou right now. So you're giving up basically 3 first-round picks.
Yeah. Probably. So, but you're getting, and I know people are like, well, you're getting rid of 2 wingers right now. The Lindstein one is just you're giving up a defenseman. They got a guy that can marinate for a little bit longer, but it's like, well, you're giving up 2 forwards. This is a future trade that maybe could still keep you competitive. Now, maybe this disrupts some chemistry, which is why I'm a little skeptical, but Alex Tuch immediately is a top-line winger for you. He was in Vegas when they were successful, and Bo Byram, just like the Brant Clark, my top 4 is set for the future. It's Byram, Broberg, Parayko, and Fowler.
I don't know what to do with Byram. He's the part of this deal that, to me, it swings what you want to do or not. If you think Byram is a legit top 4 defenseman, and probably more of a top pair defenseman, honestly, I understand why you would be swayed in the direction of going for it. I don't know that I can view it that way. Man, this is multiple teams now that have given up on him. Do you know how hard it is to give up on a 23-year-old defenseman with his kind of size and speed combination? And the Avalanche decided to do it, and now the Sabres are deciding to do it. I know the Sabres are a bad hockey club. They don't know what they're doing. They're an abomination to the sport. But you don't give up these guys when you have them.
Yep.
You just don't, especially not when they're 23. It's why it was so ridiculously crazy to me that the Blues would be able to get Broberg in the offseason. It just doesn't happen, especially when they've had multiple years at the NHL level. So there's something more here that I don't see on the surface. For me, I'm not giving up Kyrou in that kind of a deal. I've said all along, if I'm giving up Kyrou, it is to get a clear and obvious upgrade from him. And personally, I don't view Byram that way. So I would have to say no on the deal. Even though I do understand the appeal of a big, fast, 23-year-old puck-moving defenseman, those guys are hard to find.
And why I'm intrigued with Byram is the same reason I was interested in Broberg. I take the Buffalo thing out of the equation. Buffalo is a ish show right now. What he was in Colorado was he was used as a third-pair defenseman that wasn't getting the playing time. And I think you give him the playing time as the top 4, maybe you get the Philip Broberg 2.0. Final one here, the New Jersey Devils. They lost Jack Hughes. They need a centerman. This one might sting a little bit for people, but I'm thinking now and for the future.
Okay.
You're trading Schenn, Nick Leddy with 50% of his salary retained, and a 2026 third-round draft pick. And you're acquiring Simon Nemec, a young defenseman who is really good friends with Dalibor Dvorsky and projected as a top-pair right-side defenseman. And you're getting Dawson Mercer, who's a 25-year-old centerman, middle six centerman who had 25 goals a couple of years ago, and you're getting a fourth-round draft pick.
So Dawson Mercer and Nemec.
And a 2025 fourth-round pick for Schenn, 50% of Leddy's contract, and the 2026 third-round pick.
I think I'm not doing that. I think that's a no for me, dog.
Dog or Doug?
If I'm going to trade Schenn,
said dog.
If I'm trading Schenn, I'm getting a stud young player.
Yeah.
I don't know that Mercer fits into that category for me.
Well, not right now. Well, yeah, he's not. The stud is Nemec, but he's not there yet. It's, once again, you're taking a shot. But if you're down the path of not wondering if Schenn is a part of the team's core moving forward, you're making your team younger and better right away.
This is another one kind of similar to the Clark deal. I think it's more of an offseason move.
Yeah.
It's a move that I would consider, but I think it is more of an offseason move than a right now move. I would also say this. I don't know what the Devils' plans are. I don't think that they're going to be interested in taking on Schenn right now or Leddy right now.
Yeah.
Because they just lost their best player for the rest of the season. He ain't coming back, and it sounds like it's not coming back for the postseason either.
Yeah, he's
so
done.
That's probably a move that they would also want to make in the offseason of bringing in a Braden Schenn to have him as their number 2 centerman for not just now, but for the foreseeable future. So I think both teams probably say, let's hold on to this.
Put a pin in it.
Yeah, let's keep this in mind. We'll revisit it in the offseason.
Yeah.
I'd say no on that one as well. I don't even know if I would visit in the offseason. I I don't see the appeal on that one. I don't like that one. I like the McCann one. The McCann one, if you can get him.
It's the one I like the most.
Yeah, I mean, if you're throwing in Alexander off a third-round pick, I value their first-round pick this year a little more than you guys do. But if I'm getting a first-round pick basically for McCann and then I'm throwing in 2 other just additional pieces, and he can play on the wing, he can play center. Oh, by the way, there's the upside of the 40 goals. Yeah, that's the one for me. I like that one even better than the O'Reilly one, which I said I liked earlier.
I like the McCann one. I like the Clark one. I actually like the Pavel Zacha one because what Zacha is, you hope Stenberg becomes, and he's here for the next couple of years. And I like the O'Reilly one. The Byram and Tuck one, that's an off-season move. I agree with you, but when I put it together, I'm like, man, that makes you good right now, though. Gives you a top 6 winger. Neighbors drops down. You do disrupt the chemistry on that Shen and Holloway line without Kyrou, but can somebody else pick up that pace? And then the Nemec and the Mercer one, I liked a lot more before this team went on a little bit of a run.
What if I told you the O'Reilly one, instead of having to give up a third-round pick, you give up a prospect, like a real prospect in return?
Like
I don't know who that player would be, but yeah, somebody like that.
That one I wouldn't do because I'd be worried the aging process of O'Reilly. I'd be worried what that looked like in next year or 2 years when Stenberg legitimately might be a bottom 6 winger or forward for you in 2 years. That's why I would put him in the Zacha one, because Zacha makes you better right now.
Yeah, to me, if I'm the players that I'm most interested from this list are O'Reilly and McCann. I think all of them are worthy of consideration just because it's an interesting thought experiment of what Doug Armstrong is going through over the next 24 hours now, really. But this is the kind of stuff that they're talking about inside of that room because of what the team has done on the ice. They've put them in position to not sell, but instead to buy as we get closer to the
I'm very hopeful they get that Jared McCann deal done.
That'd be fun.
And I think you can sway Seattle to trade him away.
He's Alex T-Bone on BK. We'll certainly be paying attention to any of the deals that do get done over the next 24 hours or so. Pass those along, not just for your sake, but also to find out what the prices look like as we get closer to the deadline. I do wonder if because of the lack of sellers, we're going to see these prices get pushed up a little bit because the demand outweighs the supply. Coming up next, we'll talk to Jeff Marek about all of this. One of the best in the business. He's joining us here on BK and Ferrario. BK and Ferrario with Alex Ferrario. I'm Brandon Kiley, and we are happy to go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by our friend, NHL insider. He is Jeff Marek joining us here on the show as it is deadline week in the NHL. Jeff, we appreciate the time as always. Let's get right into it. With what the Blues have been able to do since the Four Nations face-off, how do you think Doug Armstrong's plans have changed in regards to what his plans are at the deadline this year?
The St. Louis Blues are right in that mix for wildcard spot in the Western Conference. It's going to be a scramble. It's going to be a mad dash. It's going to be a roller coaster ride until all of this sorts itself out. But make no mistake about it. The St. Louis Blues are right there in that mix. I know the games in hand are an issue, but as we have this conversation now, a scant 1 point out of a wild card spot. A couple of teams to jump here, but I think that the St. Louis Blues have turned into a really nice story here, and that's probably given Doug Armstrong a little bit of cause for pause and maybe recalibrated what he wants to do here, because the St. Louis Blues are right in that mix with your Vancouvers and your Calgarys and your Utahs as well.
Jeff, I'm curious from your perspective, when you look at Vancouver, when you look at Calgary, when you look at Utah,
yep.
Does it feel like for you that the Blues might be a better team than those three?
I always look to goaltending right away. That's always my default. And Jordan Binnington coming out of the Four Nations, really distinguished himself. For those that didn't know about Jordan Binnington, and I mean, how would you not, going back to the Stanley Cup? But because the St. Louis Blues kind of ran away and hid for a couple of years here. If you didn't understand how good Jordan Binnington has been. He's been real good for a while, now. So usually I default to the goaltending situation. Kevin Lankinen has been good for Vancouver. Thatcher Demko has had a hard time with the hospital bracelet. That's a well-told story. Dustin Wolf has been remarkable for the Calgary Flames, but he's a rookie. Karel Vejmelka has had a decent season for Utah here, just re-upped and did an extension with them yesterday. But if you're going to do what I do and default to the goaltending, and it's 70% of your team if you have it, it's 100% of your team if you don't. You look at the St. Louis Blues and Jordan Binnington and say, look, why not St. Louis out of all of them?
We're talking with Jeff Marek, host of The Sheet over on Daily Faceoff. He's one of our favorites here on BK and Ferrario. So, Jeff, we've talked a lot with you over the past few years of, where the Blues are at and how they're trying to build to be a competitive every season in the playoff team. And this year, like you mentioned, they might be a fringe playoff team. When you look at the Blues, what are they missing to get to that next level?
I still want another defenseman. I still want another puck-moving defenseman. If I'm looking for the future here, I'm probably looking at doing something. I know there's still some term on Falk's contract. There's still some term on Leddy's contract here, but I'm looking for a shot on the blue line, and that's why if I'm Doug Armstrong and the St. Louis Blues, I'm probably looking to the Buffalo Sabres. I know it won't be cheap, but I'd be looking at someone like Bo Byram. I'd be looking at someone like Owen Power, who I know has a lot of term and a lot of money attached to the contract. But that jumps out at me as being that one area that I'd like to shore up. And even in the short term right now, and I'm sure everybody in St. Louis has already talked about this. What about reuniting the Shen boys here? Luke Shen just got traded from Nashville to Pittsburgh yesterday. I'm not 100% sure, nor is anybody, that Kyle Dubas is going to hang on to Luke Shen here. Could we see something where Luke Shen makes his way from Nashville to Pittsburgh and then back to the Western Conference with the St. Louis Blues? I would not be surprised at that at all.
Hey, Jeff, two younger defensemen that I am curious about in that conversation. What about Brant Clark from L.A. or Simone Nemec from the New Jersey Devils?
Yeah, I like them both. I mean, Brant Clark I've watched a ton of. I mean, I watched him play with the Don Mills Flyers on that team with Brennan Othman and Shane Wright in minor/youth hockey. Watched him through the OHL with the Barrie Colts. He's someone that has the potential when he's comfortable and on his game to completely take over a game. He has that kind of potential. He's your puck mover. Has had some issues with organizations in the past, including Hockey Canada, but that's an elite level player right there. Simon Nemec, boy, I mean, if you're the New Jersey Devils, you're making this move at a low point. He hasn't had a great season. with the Devils organization, obviously primarily in the American Hockey League. Not helping matters was, squawking about not having a spot. I do understand it. A couple of years ago, he was a mainstay on the blue line. So I understand where the player would be upset, but then didn't exactly do anything to help his cause. When he got called up, you would be making a move if you're New Jersey. You'd be making a move at his low end as opposed to a higher end. So I'm not sure that New Jersey wants to make that decision quite just yet. Again, I'll just show my bias here. I really like Brandt Clarke. I really like Brandt Clarke as a puck-moving, offensively minded defenseman. If I'm making a choice between the two, I'm probably siding with the Los Angeles Kings prospect here.
All right, Jeff, I do not think the Blues are going to do this given where they're at this point in the season, and they have made it very clear to everybody that will listen. They're trying to make it to the playoffs, and here comes that but that you're talking about. But Toronto is desperate, and you know this as well as anybody. They so badly want a second or a third line center, and the market, I don't have to tell you this, there ain't a whole lot of them out there. Braden Shen might be the best name out there if he is potentially out there. If you're in Doug Armstrong's shoes, what do you think is the take it or leave it offer that Toronto eventually puts on the table that is like, okay, this is the best thing that we can do. There is nothing more that we can give you. Army, are you taking it or are you leaving it? What do you think that offer is from the Toronto side of things?
First of all, if I'm Doug Armstrong, who I'm trying to get here is Matthew Nyes and bring him back. First of all, there's a lot of great University of Minnesota Golden Gophers that are out there that are having really outstanding years this season. And Matthew Nyes is one of them. I think about, down the road with Jimmy Snuggerud, et cetera, that romantic story. But if I'm Doug Armstrong, I'm trying anything that I can to try to get Matthew Nyes out of that organization. Having said that, I don't know if the Maple Leafs want to touch the roster at all. The Maple Leafs now have to compete with the Florida Panthers, who just made a big move with Seth Jones, the Tampa Bay Lightning, by bringing in Yanni Gordon, Oliver Bjorkstrand yesterday. They're making big moves. All of a sudden now, the two teams that you're closest associated with have made their big moves, so you don't want to hurt your lineup. So if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're probably saying this is going to cost us at least one and maybe two of Easton Cowan, Fraser Minton, Ben Danford, and one or maybe a couple of those first-round draft picks. That's what if I'm the Maple Leafs, that's what I'm hoping gets it done if I'm looking to bring in Braden Shen, because you don't want to make a hole that you have to go and fill because you're bringing in these guys. The Florida Panthers were able to not significantly damage their team by bringing in Seth Jones, ditto for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And if you're the Maple Leafs, you want to get as much as possible and not give up any right now. You're looking at prospects and picks.
If you're the Blues, Jeff, are you doing that trade?
If I can get Matthew Nyes, no. But if I'm the Blues right now, I'm going for it.
Right.
Like I'm in a playoff position. And here's the other thing that I don't think we give enough attention to, and that is the experience for younger players of having a playoff chase and not just playing empty calorie games down the stretch. There is a lot of value in that. And let's face it, there's no rush here to move Braden Shen whatsoever. He's still under contract for a couple more years for the St. Louis Blues. So it's not as if Doug Armstrong is looking at the prospects of Braden Shen walking away at the end of this season. If I'm the St. Louis Blues, I'm looking around and I'm saying, you know what, maybe the clock strikes midnight soon for the Calgary Flames. Ditto for the Vancouver Canucks, especially with the injuries, not just to Demko, but to Quinn Hughes as well. Don't know exactly what we're getting necessarily from one night to the next from Utah, so why not us? I'd be looking all around and saying, we got a good shot at giving all of our younger players a really great experience of what a full 82-game season looks and feels like, and also we got a great shot at making the postseason here, so let's go for it.
Jeff, I know you're up against it, so you can literally just give me a name here, and then we can get you out of here if you want. If you're in Doug Armstrong's shoes and you're looking to the market, you're saying, you know what, I would really like to upgrade my third-line center. Doesn't have to be anybody great, but a little bit more speed than what they're getting out of Oscar Sundqvist right now would probably be ideal. What's a name that you'd be looking at on the market as a third-line center for the St. Louis Blues?
There's one player out there, and I know a lot of teams are looking at him. I think Toronto's looking at him. I think Calgary is looking at him. He's a versatile player. He can play center. He can play wing, and that is Luke Cunnin with the San Jose Sharks. That's where, if I was St. Louis, that's one of the places I'd be looking for sure.
Jeff Marek is one of the best in the business. Alex loves him because he agrees with his Matthew Nyes take, if nothing less. We appreciate the time as always, Jeff. Take care of yourself, man.
Did you see Nyes go at White Cloud last night?
Unbelievable.
And you know what I was thinking the whole time, Jeff? I'm like, oh, that's a St. Louis Blue.
That's Braden Shen, 23-year-old Braden Shen.
I'm like, oh, that's a St. Louis Blue. It makes a lot of sense why you and I are on the same page, Jeff.
Like, I know the history of the St. Louis Blues is like they like tough players. Like, this goes back to 67 expansion. This team likes to have robust hockey players, and I'm watching this, and I'm like, okay, I'm going on St. Louis tomorrow. I'm like, holy smokes, does this one make a lot of sense? But if you're Toronto, there's not a chance that Tree Living lets them go. They know what they have there. I mean, listen, they almost let him go in that first went back when he was playing with Minnesota in that conversation for Marc-Andre Fleury. So they came close. They looked over the edge, and they still said no.
Well, a boy can dream, Jeff, and when it happens, you'll be the first one that I text.
Jeff, I know, rub it in my face.
Jeff, you're the best, buddy. We always appreciate the time, and enjoy these next 24 hours.
Should be fun. Thanks, boys. Enjoy it.
That was Jeff Marek. We talked with him a little bit earlier today with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Good interview with Jeff, as always. Alex, I really do want to talk a little bit about Luke Cunnin. Yeah. You want to do that now, or should we get into it on the other side?
Well, I like to make sure our clock is on schedules because I went super long with my trade proposal, so let's do it on the other side.
All right, let's get into the Luke Cunnin discussion on the other side. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys want to have any reaction to that, we'll get to some of your thoughts as well. And there's been another trade in the NHL. It actually might be a nice way to look at what the proposal would be for Luke Cunnin. We'll get into that next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendricks here, the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues took down the Kings last night in a shootout 3-2. They are off today before they return back to action tomorrow night when they visit the Anaheim Ducks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 8 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 9 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. And Cardinals currently in spring training action as they're tied at 0 with the Washington Nationals in the bottom of the third inning. Eric Fetty so far has breezed through 3 innings and allowed no runs. The Sports Update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See him at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, if you missed any of our conversation with Jeff Marek, highly recommend checking that out on the podcast page. Does great work with Daily Faceoff. He's been one of our favorites for years. He's always kind with his time to come on with us here on 101 ESPN. He's super tight. He's super plugged in. Gives great info, and he mentioned to us, Alex, when he thinks about the Blues relative to the rest of the Western Conference, especially the wild card contenders, he defaults to the goaltending. Jordan Bennington, compared to the goalies that the Blues are going up against, he's just better than those other guys. So why not St. Louis? And that's kind of my approach right now as well. Why not the Blues? You look at Vancouver, they're flawed. You look at Calgary, they're flawed. You look at Utah, they're very flawed. They've all had their ups and downs, and the Blues are going through a stretch right now where they're on the incline at the right time. So Doug Armstrong has an interesting proposition in front of them. What do we do? Do we add? Do we stick with what we've got? Do we consider still selling despite being in the playoff mix right now? I think he's probably going to be inclined to either add or stick with what he's got. Let's stick on the add side of things for just a moment. Jeff Marek brought up the idea of, do you consider a guy like Luke Kunin as a third-line center? He's not perfect, but he is a St. Louisan, which makes him pretty damn close. He's played third line for Nashville. He's been there with San Jose as well. He's on a really bad team right now. Alex, Luke Kunin is a solid player. I think he would be an upgrade over what you have currently with Oskar Sundqvist. And you mentioned that there was just a trade that was made by the Sharks, right?
Yeah. T-Bone was the one that had it. Nico Sturm from the San Jose Sharks, who's middle six, bottom pair centerman, was traded to the Florida Panthers for a fourth-round draft pick in 2026.
He's 29 years old, fourth liner. Maybe he's a fourth-round pick. Maybe you'd have to give up a third for or the equivalent of a third-round pick.
I think you're talking probably a fourth-rounder and maybe a low-level prospect that goes the other way.
Is that something that moves the needle for you? Would you be interested in doing something like that?
Yeah, I would. And that goes to the point of what Joey said. Is that my desire? No. I would love for this team to go big game hunting and go out there and get a Jared McCann or an Alex Tuck or something like that to better your team. But if you're not going to, or frankly you can't, then Luke Kunin makes a lot of sense. Everybody, I've seen a ton of on the Graveyard chat right now over on our YouTube talking about, I'm so sick of the St. Louis narrative. Yes, Luke Kunin is from Chesterfield. BK didn't even realize that until I brought it up.
Yeah, no, this is not a thing where I am saying the Blues should go acquire him because he's from St. Louis. I promise you. This is about cost acquisition, which is low, and a guy that makes sense timeline-wise with where they're at. And he can come in and play that third line. It's really a question of, do you think Luke Kunin is better than Oskar Sundqvist?
Yeah. Well,
if the answer is yes, he should be somebody you're at least interested in. If the answer is no, and that's possible, then you decide, okay, we're not going to go that route. We just stick with what we got, or we aim higher.
Yeah.
That's why I brought up Luke Kunin.
Well, and here's why I would be interested in Luke Kunin. Did people want Trent Frederick this trade deadline? Were people bringing up Trent Frederick's name? Because if you look at the last last 4 seasons, including this one, Trent Frederick and Luke Kunin are basically the same player. Kunin's got 90 points. Trent Frederick's got 104. Frederick is actually worse in the faceoff dot, and they've got the same amount of games played, same amount of penalty minutes. The difference is the plus-minus, but as we're seeing with Cam Fowler, you can't judge a plus-minus on a guy 100%. On a bad team. So, yeah, if Luke Kunin is the direction they go, you know what that does to me? That's what they did when they got Michael Del Zotto in the Stanley Cup run. Was it a guy that's going to slot in every single night? Absolutely not. But you know what he was? He was insurance when somebody got injured, or insurance if somebody wore down, and it's a guy you can rely on. And frankly, that's what, if you're not going top of the line fishing, like for Jared McCann or something like that, then you go down to this to where you say, we just need another piece that could be inserted into this group.
Yeah, I just think he helps you. He helps you potentially get through the rest of this season, and you need guys like that. I mean, we've all been talking about how Sonny looks like a little bit of a liability. Now, he's been playing better. He's been playing much better lately. I just don't know how much you can trust that. Is Sonny going to look the same in 3 weeks when he's been playing for a month straight compared to when he just had 2 weeks off? Because Sonny looked decent at the beginning of the regular season as well. I think at this point in his career, he's a guy that looks good when he's rested.
Yeah.
And right now, he's pretty well rested coming off of that break. I don't know how long that lasts. So if you have a couple of guys that can piece things together in that bottom six for you at the center position, hell, there was a time where Radek Faksa recently was taking a ton of penalties. Wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world if you put Luke Cunnin in at third line center, bumped Oscar Sundqvist down to that fourth line, gave a couple of nights off to Faksa, and then maybe you move things around depending on how things are going for you. So it's not something that gets you going.
No.
Like, this is not the kind of move that we have been talking about, but these are the kinds of moves that typically happen at the deadline, if we're being honest. And a lot of the time, even when Colorado won their cup, their moves that they added at the deadline were third and fourth line players that just upgraded what they had previously. So I think it makes some sense for the Blues. It's not perfect, but he is somebody that I would be interested in going out there and acquiring.
Yeah, to me, that's the equivalent of standing pat. I know that sounds odd because you're buying, but he's not a guy that comes in and immediately is slotted into your lineup. He's a guy that comes in and has to fight for playing time, just like a Sundqvist and a Matthew Joseph. Like, if that trade happens, I'm that third line thinking I have to keep my game at the best possible, otherwise I'm going to come out of the lineup. Now, does that cause disruptions? Maybe. I don't know where this team's chemistry is at right now, but it sounds like they're pretty tight. But if you're the Blues, you absolutely try and pursue something. And here's the thing. Luke Cunnin's a free agent after this year. If it doesn't work out, then you just walk away from it.
All right. The other thing that he mentioned, Alex, is potentially adding a puck-moving defenseman. Now, Joey mentioned earlier today, he would not do anything on the blue line. He likes what the Blues have been able to see out of Nick Leddy since coming back from his injury, and he likes that pairing with Suter. And frankly, just watching lately, I feel the same way. I think they've been fine. Yep. I don't see them as a huge liability for you right now. I can understand if you wanted to trade Nick Leddy because of the contract, and it's more about that than it is anything else, and then maybe you add a Luke Schenn or something like that. But how do you view what the Blues have right now defensively and what they could do at the deadline in that area?
Man, I just don't know if I want to go trade for another defenseman. I mean, right now you've got 7 guys, and Tyler Tucker's the odd one out, and prior to that break, he was playing really good hockey for them. I do agree with Joey in the sense of, like, Leddy's been playing well. Look at the defensive numbers we've talked about. Since they've returned from the break, Leddy's played in all but one game, and they've been one of the stingiest teams in the NHL. But the thing I get held up with Nick Leddy is you got that contract. It's one more year at $4 million. Do you have to find a way to move off of some of this money? I think Luke Schenn is a lateral move. I think you've got a Luke Schenn and a younger version in Tyler Tucker.
Sure.
I think if you're looking for defense, you're looking to upgrade over Justin Falk. You're looking for a top 4 defenseman so that Falk slides down to a third pair role, or frankly, Falk and Leddy compete for that final spot. And I know that sounds crazy to say for how good Broberg has played, but I think that's for how good Broberg is. I don't know if that's the pairing that's worked with Falk, but it's hard to talk about making a trade for a defenseman when they've been one of the best defensive teams in the NHL since the Four Nations break.
So here's my question for you guys. After hearing from Jeff Marek, talking with Joey Vitale earlier today, hearing from Darren Drager on our show, we've talked with a lot of good insiders. So, hey, Chris Pronger yesterday joined us as well, talking about what he thinks the Blues should look to do. If you could acquire one player this year at the deadline, taking into account what the cost is going to be that you have to give up in order to acquire that player, who would you guys be targeting if you were in Doug Armstrong's shoes?
Mine would be Jared McCann, the guy that I brought up.
That would be mine.
That'd be the guy that I would target. And I would call Seattle and I would pester them the same way Toronto's been pestering the Blues for Braden Schenn.
That's my name.
I think if you're looking for whether you wanted to make him a center or a winger, he makes the most sense because he can come in and play in your top 6 if you wanted to put him on the wing, for example, and acquire him. First-round pick protected from this year, and then you throw in a couple of other pieces. I really like him. I'd say it's either him or O'Reilly. I think those are the 2 for me.
And you guys are okay with giving up a first-round pick?
Yeah. I've said this since Monday when I did the podcast. I don't care about that pick right now. Like, you could top 10 protect it, which teams will typically do because, they're not getting it to be a top 10 pick. You hope that happens, but you always defer it to the next year. If it's anywhere between 12 and 16 because you missed the playoffs, man, I could care less about that pick.
A little bit of news to pass along. This comes from the St. Louis Blues. Colton Ellis has agreed to a 2-year extension with the Blues. It's a 2-way contract. He's been excellent for them in the AHL this year, ranking second in the AHL with a .926 save percentage. He's third in the league with 19 wins on the year. He is 19-7-3. This is just some house cleaning stuff. He had arbitration rights going into this offseason, so it's a 2-year, 2-way contract. Colton Ellis is going to be with the organization for at least the next couple of seasons. Adds depth. Continues to have that depth in their organization.
Colton Ellis, in their opinion, is probably the next Joel Hofer moving forward, so you keep them locked up. I do have this one for you guys. This comes from Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects, who pretty tied in with organizations because of their draft picks. He said, plenty of calls coming in on Brandon Tanev and Yanni Gourde as pure rentals, but I'm told the Kraken are also listening on Jared McCann.
There you go.
It won't be cheap, as the former 40-goal man has 2 years remaining at $5 million per year.
That's the guy that makes the most sense for me. Yep. He's got a good contract right now. He makes sense for you. He continues to add that flexibility. He can play center. He can play on the wing. Makes all the sense.
2 more years. He'll be 30 at the end of that contract.
He's also, I mean, if we're just being honest, he's insurance on Dvorsky.
Yep.
Yeah.
If Dvorsky takes a little more time than what you're currently anticipating, you can give him that time if you have Jared McCann playing that center position.
Yeah, he's Ryan O'Reilly plus. Like, you bring in Ryan O'Reilly because he's protection for Dvorsky, but he's older and he doesn't have the same offensive prowess that he used to. You bring in Jared McCann because he's your third center next year if the team stays the way they are. Dvorsky, if he makes his team, is on a wing, and once he's ready, then you just flip-flop him.
More Blues coming up here in just about 10 minutes or so. Jeremy Rutherford joins the show, Blues insider for The Athletic. He'll give us the latest that he is hearing on the Blues, whether it pertains to Shin, what they could potentially add at the deadline. JR joins us in 10 minutes. The Junk Drawer is coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Alex, I've had a song that has been going through my head now for, I would say, probably the last week. Do you ever have this where you hear a song, maybe even you go to a concert, and it's a happy thing, and you're just like kind of tapping that foot all day long for a couple of days? Do you have that come to you?
Do you know how many kids I have and how old they are?
Yeah,
I do, and it's called basically the Disney album of every single song that you can think of, and those get stuck in my head for a very long time.
That's the go-to for you guys?
It's just nonstop, and so my daughters have the two. They love Disney, like the actual songs from the movie, and then they like the Disney punk rock version because I listen to that, and so it's either, Daddy, we want to listen to our Disney, or Daddy, we want to listen to your Disney. But yes, I can recite to you I Let It Go from Frozen front to back.
Well, this is the one that's been stuck in my head because my son is now an avid watcher of Miss Rachel. It's happened literally in the last week or so.
I know exactly what song you're going to say. This is music terrorism.
All he does now is go around the house saying, "Bubble, bubble, bubble." Take a listen. All right, turn it off. Turn it off.
Sticky, 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 sticky bubble gum. Picture kids into your head. And you blow it, and you pull it away.
That is the first time I've heard that song. Oh, that's annoying.
Dude, and that's it. That's the entire song. Yep. It's a 5-minute song.
This is a 30-minute loop.
And that's it. It doesn't change.
This sounds like a punishment.
2 words that change.
I was just thinking that.
It might as well be the wheels on the bus, but over.
That one's not that bad.
And over and over again.
Yep.
It is infuriating. And that song has not left my head for a week. I am dreading the moment that Luca gets home today, not because he's getting home. I love the kid more than anything in the entire world. But I'm dreading the moment that I have to turn that back onto my television, and I have to watch that on the big TV while I watch the Blues game on my small phone.
Oh, well, that's a true
what's
thing.
Happening to me right now,
T-Bone,
man.
hit it again.
Oh, no, I don't want
Please
to.
do not.
Sticky, 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 sticky bubble gum. And you pull them, and you pull them away.
Oh, that's annoying. Man, have you seen the...
Oh, no. It's really fun when my 3-year-old watches this and she stands in front of the television and she does this. And you pull them, and you pull them, and you pull them away.
All right, see you guys looking outside. He said, I hate you.
Yep.
I hate you.
It's the song, man.
You've all been here.
Yep.
Have you seen the episode of the Impractical Jokers? I think it was the one where they did it during
where he puts
COVID.
them in the car.
He puts them in the car with the animatronics, and they sing a song, and he has to drive for 5 hours.
Drive.
It's the same song.
Drive.
Yeah, drive. That's what it was. Imagine that, and we made BK bring us food or something.
Yeah, and have to drive
you live,
to us. Oh, yeah.
30 minutes away. Do it during rush hour,
man.
5 o'clock.
Oh,
BK
yeah.
stuck, and it's just this
Punishment
song on loop.
For 12 hours after the show, BK is on call for us.
No,
that's going to be the punishment.
We do have a little bit of breaking news to pass along here from the NHL. Another trade has been made. Alex Vegas. You knew they were going to be active.
Oh, did Mark Stone go on LTIR?
Nope, they brought back one of their old players. Riley Smith is heading back to Las Vegas. In return, they get a 3rd-round pick in 2025. So this upcoming year, 3rd-round pick. This is a good one, though. It's San Jose's 3rd-round pick coming in return from the New York Rangers. So Riley Smith back to Vegas. 3rd-round pick is the compensation. Feels like these prices have not been as high as I would have expected them to be.
And once again, they're all 2026 draft picks.
This one's 2025.
Oh, it's 2025
this year.
Okay, well that's a different one because a lot of these have been 2026. But yeah, I mean, right now you're seeing middle tier forwards that are getting traded for 3rd or 4th round picks, which again, it's good for the Blues because the price is set high if you want one of their players. Plus, you might have to give that 1st-round pick up to get a guy that you want, and that's beneficial for the team.
Last thing here, another bit of news. We knew something was coming on waivers today. Here it is. Ryan Reeves has been placed on waivers by the Toronto Maple Leafs.
It doesn't make any sense, but my goodness, I would love to see that for the Blues.
It doesn't make sense?
I don't think so, because where is he playing?
You know how much I love him.
If you say Nathan Walker, I will slap you across your face.
He has an infamous playoff moment. I used to have the shirt of Reeves blowing a kiss to who was
That's
it? The
fine,
Stars bench.
but if you say Nathan Walker, I will have to slap you in the face.
That's the spot.
Fine.
If you wanted to get him into the lineup, that's the spot.
No.
You wouldn't do it?
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
I'd
bring
that.
him, but, well, I guess I wouldn't. He makes like $2 million, I think.
That's why they're doing this.
Yeah, and if you claim him on waivers, you have to take that. Where is he?
Guys.
1.3 this year and next year. No.
Oh, you've got 2 years left on his deal?
This year and next year. No, I'm not doing it.
Guys, our old friends back in the division.
Jakub Vrana?
Vrana was claimed by?
Minnesota.
No.
Dallas?
No. The Nashville Predators.
Oh, Barry, we've been down that road, friend. You don't need it.
So there you go. That's your latest news here on BK and Ferrario. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Jeremy Rutherford, Blues Insider for 101 ESPN. Been a fun show today. Joey Vitale joined us at 11:30. We talked to Jeff Marek as well. We heard from Alex Ferrario with his trade proposals. I put the conductor hat on. Been a good show. Fun time of the year. Blues back in it. 1 point out of the playoff race right now in the Western Conference. They've won 7. They're 7-2-2 in their last 11 games. Points in 9 of 11. And Jeremy Rutherford, Blues Insider for The Athletic, joins us now on BK and Ferrario. Joins us via the Callier and Thompson hotline. JR, it's been a hell of a lot of fun for us to watch. What's it like covering this team compared to what it was a month ago?
It's been absolutely bonkers. I think I have there's a bench right next to me. I'm going to sit down because I need to be seated when we're going to talk about the Blues being in the playoff picture and potentially adding at the deadline for this interview. Got to have a seat. I mean, who would have thought this 3 weeks ago, 10 days ago? It just seemed unimaginable. I think it's a combination of a couple things. Obviously, the time off allowed them to hit the reset button. Some guys, as you guys talked about, got healthier, and they backs against the walls. They knew what they had to do before the deadline, and they're doing it. So as I wrote this morning at The Athletic, when I walked into crypto.com, whatever they want to call it these days, Staples is what I call it.
It's the Staples Center.
It's the Staples Center.
Stop acting like we've changed the name.
When I walked in there yesterday for that morning skate, 20th season covering the Blues, when you hear a buzz at the morning skate, you just know that team is engaged. They're having fun, willing to do whatever it takes, play for each other. They all said the same cliches after the game last night. But in this case, it's true, guys. You can feel that buzz. And I think that, in part, obviously you have to have the production, but that element of a hockey team that's on a roll is what I'm seeing right now.
So, JR, you were in that room yesterday. You've been in this room all season long. How much has the vibe or the confidence changed from these players compared to, say, a couple of months ago?
Yeah, significantly. And I think, as you look back to a couple months ago, and same players, but why wasn't it there? I think a number of things. You didn't have a lot of practice time. Jim Montgomery was trying to make tweaks on the fly. You didn't have your top guys producing. Doug Armstrong pointed that out. We can't get our top six going together at the same time. The goaltending wasn't consistent like we've seen it with Jordan Binnington and Joel Hofer. And the special teams were atrocious. And when teams not playing well and you're losing games, it's tough to come to the rink, as anyone can imagine. But when you have that reset, and if I'm the Blues, I don't know that they could have had a wish list hit on every single thing they needed to have happen during the retool. Let's say Jordan Binnington gives up that goal to Brady Tkachuk and loses the gold medal game. He comes out of there kind of somber. I didn't live up to the expectations, things like that. No, he comes with a gold medal, and now he's got all the confidence in the world, gets a little bit of rest, and no rust, and he's continued what he's doing here. And then I think, too, somebody said it, I can't remember, but I think when these players watch that Four Nations tournament and they just saw the love of the game and the passion that it takes to be successful, I think that they took that with them to the rink, and they said, okay, here's what we got to do, guys. And everybody from Jake Neighbors last night, you guys heard the interviews, to Jordan Binnington, they just said the love is there. They're just excited to come to the rink and try to see this thing through.
Well, JR, and with that in mind, I don't think they're going to be trading their captain. That's my own speculation, but I am curious. You had a piece up earlier this week. What is your feel on how the Blues, as of today, like 30,000-foot view? We can get into players and stuff here in a minute, the speculation, but in your opinion, how is Army going to approach the next 24 hours?
Well, I think that all this stuff changes day to day, week to week. And so if what we've said or wrote a couple days ago, even when the Blues looked heading into the trade deadline like they might sell off a few parts, that stuff changes with the way they've played. And so even when I wrote a couple days ago about Braden Shen, I wrote what I was hearing is that the Blues are on the fence about trying to trade him. And obviously he controls all the cards here with the no trade clause. But I think you get to a point now where you just can't make that move. You're not going to Braden Shen to ask him to waive the no trade clause unless you just get knocked over with a deal. Like if you're Doug Armstrong and somebody, Toronto calls and says, hey, we're going to give you X, Y, Z, and I'm not saying Matthew Knies is going to be in a deal, but hypothetically, if something like that were to happen, I don't know how you could say no. But that said, I think that Doug Armstrong has to be looking at it like, hey, there's every reason imaginable to give this team a chance to finish out the season, get these players, some young guys, this playoff experience, and also reward them for what they've done. I know I've seen in the comment section of some of my stories, no, that's absolutely the wrong approach. Sell, sell, sell. This isn't a good team. I just don't know. There's so many reasons to kind of continue to push this group and reward it for what it's accomplished thus far.
Well, those people should probably go see a therapist or something. They're crazy if they think that.
Well, also, at some point, can we just enjoy what's happening?
Yeah, why does it always have to be we're not a cup contender?
I'm going to get on a high horse here for a second.
Here we go.
Here we go.
It's become so miserable at times for people to be fans. Dude, just when your team plays well, enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of all of this? Like, why be a fan 100%. If all of it is going to be miserable for you, including when your team goes from left for dead, to winning 7 games out of 11 and getting 9 points in 9 of the last 11, and gives you every reason to believe in them as really having a chance to make it to the playoffs. This is the fun stuff, man. So enjoy it, or otherwise, like, look yourself in the mirror at night and ask yourself, do I actually like this? Am I enjoying this, or is it making me angry watching this night tonight? And is that actually a bad thing for my health? Sorry, that's my high horse. It drives me crazy, and I think a lot of it is social media, and I'm going to back away from the microphone now.
That's BK, I agree with you 100%. All the questions that we've had the past, 3 weeks, Buchnevich, Thomas need to play better. Okay, they are. Enjoy it. Look at the power play. 0 for 3 last night, 3 shots on goal. Gosh, this power play can never come up with a big goal. Robert Thomas does. Ties the game 2-2. Bennington, there's so many positives in what's gone with this. I think you're right. Just enjoy it. And, however far it takes you, I think that none of us really saw this coming.
So I'm invested, JR, despite those crazy people, and I'm very optimistic. Where is the upgrade for the Blues? If they are approaching this deadline to look to add some reinforcements, where is the upgrade for Doug Armstrong?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because I think that if Doug Armstrong is committed to this team, which we just said, he probably is, do you look at upgrading and what's the cost? As you guys have been saying, I don't think you pony up, any significant price to try to upgrade this roster. If it's a player like you guys have been talking about, a Jared McCann, who I think could help, I like him more so than O'Reilly because of the age factor. He's 28, O'Reilly's 34 with 2 years left on that deal at 4.5. To me, it's probably, I heard Joey say, a top-line player, but it's probably a middle 6 because I just don't know where you're going to get a top-line player at a decent price. So if it's McCann, if it's Luke Cunnin, I do think they need some extra oomph in the middle for a Sundqvist or for that third line, even though that third line's been playing pretty well here lately. In terms of the defense, I think you could bring somebody in, but the only way you're going to be able to get out of this defensive roster jam is to be able to move somebody. So at the deadline, is there a taker for a Letty, a Falk, somebody like that? Can you bring an upgrade in and also move out one of those contracts? I don't think that's possible, but if it is, for sure try to do something like that. But to me, it's probably forward and it's probably third line.
Out of curiosity, JR, what do you think the prices are looking like right now? I know you talk with people around the league, whether it's other writers that are hearing stuff from other teams, whatever. What are you hearing price-wise on some of those kind of middle 6 types of forwards? Is it going to take a ton this year?
No, I don't think so. The only thing is the Blues don't have a lot of draft picks, as we know, not a lot of draft equity, no second, third, fourth next year. And I'm with you guys that, you can trade a first-round pick. You're not necessarily married to that. I know it sounds crazy, but the Blues do have a lot of prospects and a lot of first-round prospects in their system, but you certainly don't want to overpay, and I know you're not saying that, but you don't want to send that first-round pick somewhere just to get a middle 6 forward who maybe has a year or 2 left on the deal, and he might make you a little more competitive. I just don't know. So if you can't get a player to come in and help you for one of your many middle prospects or a draft pick that's not a first-round draft pick, I think that would probably be the way to go.
Kind of felt like you were taking a shot at my Jared McCann take earlier today, JR. Don't appreciate it.
No, and that wouldn't be, that would be smart. I could see that because he's got the term and because he's got 2 years left on that deal and can still help you moving forward.
28 years old, former 40 goal scorer. I know everybody mentions that with him, and he's probably not that anymore, but it's fine.
It's fine.
25 plus goal scorer, first round pick in return for him. That makes some sense to me.
Hey, I love when people say like former 40 goal scorer, and it was just a couple years ago, but it's like once you have something on your resume, it never goes away. It'd be like, I'm always doing the big guy jokes, but I wish somebody would call me like the former 210-pound Jeremy Rutherford.
You're the former chicken drumstick champion.
It should just stick with me forever. Forget the current weight, just former 210.
Yeah,
former 210
for Jared McCann. Former 40 goal scorer, now probably 25 goal scorer.
I'll take it.
Exactly. We'll give up a first round pick for it. It is it's worth it. I think that's probably the move that I would like to see them make. All right, JR, we appreciate the time as always, man. Stay by your phone. Hopefully you'll hear something soon on the Blues acquiring Mikko Rantanen.
Yep, and I got to tell you guys paint the picture here. Coming down the elevator here at the hotel in L.A., and I had the cell phone on the speaker just so I could hear you guys as we were getting ready to come on here. And there was a guy with a cart in the elevator, and he heard the bubblegum song and gave me a look like, what in the hell are you listening?
Yeah, that makes sense. A 40-plus-year-old man listening to Miss Rachel in the elevator.
Former 210-pounder.
Yeah, former 210-pounder.
All right, see you, boys.
Appreciate you, Jeremy Rutherford, joining us as he does each and every week here on BK and Ferrario. And normally on Tuesdays, pushed it to Thursdays this week because JR had to book a last-minute flight out to Los Angeles. Turns out he wasn't expecting this team to go on quite the run, and now he kind of needed to be in L.A. to watch them play against the Kings.
But it's L.A., right, JR? You could be happy that you're there.
Yeah, I mean, it could absolutely be worse for him. All right, coming up in 15 minutes, we continue our countdown of the 20 most important players for the 2025 season with number 17 on that list, a guy who last year coming into the season, I didn't think was going to play into their situation in 2025 at all. And now he's one of their most important players on the roster heading into 2026. We'll tell you who that is in 15 minutes. Believe it or not, it's coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Victory Men's Health. They can unlock your inner champion today. It's a super easy process. Go to their website, victorymenshealth.com. And when you get over there, super easy. Book that first appointment, top right corner of the page. Click book now. Put your name, email, phone number. Tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you. And then tell them a little bit about yourself. What's that look like? What does it mean to unlock your inner champion? For some people, that means dealing with erectile dysfunction. It could be low testosterone that's leaving you feeling groggy. You're not getting the same amount of oomph out of your workouts as you once did. Maybe you want help losing some of that weight that you gained over the holiday season. You tried to do it on your own. Maybe it was a New Year's resolution. It hasn't gone as planned. They can help you out with that over at Victory Men's Health. So check them out today. 4 great locations across the St. Louis metro area. They have one in O'Fallon, Missouri, another in O'Fallon, Illinois, and then 2 others, Sunset Hills, and then the one that I go to personally is in Town and Country. You can go to any of those 4 locations or check out all that they have available to you at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com.
And this song just hits now. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
free. We're flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. You guys give us a scenario. We'll tell you if we are believing it or not here on BK and Ferrario.
Why do you always have to go high pitch? This is how bands break up. Follow the damn directions.
Hey, man.
Me and Miss Rachel, we had a conversation about my performances during this.
I so wanted to ruin that song by singing my part, but the sticky bubble gum, but I know that would upset a lot of listeners, so I didn't do that.
All right, let's get into Believe It or Not.
High pitch, though, man.
Guys, believe it or not, by this time on Saturday, so 48 hours from now, the St. Louis Blues will have a new player in their top 9. They'll have somebody from the outside that is not currently on the roster that is playing on their top 9 48 hours from now.
I'm going to believe it. I think when Doug Armstrong says, one thing we know about Doug Armstrong is he is a very straight shooter, honest man. When he says the team will tell me what to do, the team has told him to bring in some reinforcements. The team has told him that we're playing well, give us a little bit more. And that's what I think he's going to do. I don't know what it is. Frankly, I don't know how it comes about. But I do think they're going to add something that plays into their top 9 to provide depth at their forward position.
I think I'm going to believe it as well. I don't think Army would go through a deadline of just standing pat. I think he would want to do something. Like last year, I know he held pat. I think he was open-minded to moving Booch at that point. But he never got the offer that he really wanted, so he decided to stand pat, and he probably was trying to take calls on other pieces to sell. I don't think he's just going to stand around and just not do anything. I think he's going to make a move, and I think it's going to be a move that will help them. So I'll say believe it.
I'm going to believe it as well. I think they end up adding somebody that fits into their top 9. I don't know who that player is. It's possible we haven't heard his name yet. Like it's somebody that we're not even thinking of because this is typically what Doug Armstrong does, right? You get to the deadline. We talked about the puck-moving defenseman. Well, it ends up being Nick Leddy. We went down a number of different paths. I think Mike McKenna was the first guy that mentioned Nick Leddy's name to us on the show. And we'll talk to Mike McKenna tomorrow, by the way, right around trade deadline time to hear kind of where he's at with all of this. I think they end up adding a top 9 forward. I just don't know who that guy is going to be. What do you got, Alex?
Guys, believe it or not, I saw this conversation going back and forth on the YouTube chat, our graveyard. Believe it or not, Jimmy Snuggerud plays a playoff game for the Blues this year.
I thought that was really interesting. I'm glad you brought this up.
Thanks, man. I have some good ideas on this show.
Last year, this was the plan.
From YouTube? Yeah, good idea.
Well,
Take it from there.
They were arguing over it, and I said, hey, let's bring it to the conversation.
Last year, this was their plan. Doug Armstrong said, whenever he's ready to go, he's going to be a part of our roster. He's going to be in our lineup at the NHL level.
Yeah, and you can't sell him on going to the AHL when you sign him. Like, he's going to be done with that Four Nations turn, or not Four Nations, the Frozen Four. And if he wins the championship or gets to the championship, they've got one game left in the regular season.
I'm believing this. I think he will be a third-line winger for you with whoever that new center is, Bolduc, and Jimmy Snuggerud. I think he takes the place of Matthew Joseph, and maybe Matthew Joseph takes the place. I know nobody wants to hear it. Certainly myself, I like him as well, but maybe Matthew Joseph bumps down to that fourth line and takes Walker's spot. But I'm believing this. If they are in it at the end of the season, or if they're out of it, when Jimmy Snuggerud signs with this team, he will be on the NHL roster. He will play games for the Blues however long they end up staying.
I think I'll believe it too. And where you put him 5-on-5, I don't know, but look, their power play could use a shot like Snuggerud's.
Yes,
that's a great point.
In the power play, I mean, if there's something that can really make a difference once you get to the playoffs, it is special teams, because you don't typically get a lot of power play opportunities. They call the game a little bit tighter. So when you do get an opportunity, you've got to make them pay. And I think that would be the number one reason why you would want to carry him and play him in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm believing this as well. We know we're not playing more likely to happen, but I don't think you see Dvorsky at all this year. And I think you see Jimmy Snuggerud for a couple of games.
I agree.
That's what Matthew Nyes did with Toronto, by the way. He played 2 games for Toronto at the end of the season and then played in the first round for him, and I believe he scored 2 goals for Toronto in that postseason.
Think about Dylan Holloway last year. Yep. He was not a guy that played every game.
He was an AHL guy.
He played 38 games, so it was much more than what you're expecting to see out of Jimmy Snuggerud, but Holloway ended up becoming a mainstay for them once they got to the playoffs. Same thing was true for Broberg. He was even, I think, fewer games played last year.
Well, even Matthew Nyes. Nyes was playing in their top 6 that year in the playoff run. He was playing with Austin Matthews.
How'd that go?
Well, he scored 2 goals.
How'd the team do?
Well, team's awful. That's why they should probably trade Matthew Nyes.
Yeah. Broberg last year played 12 games for Edmonton in the regular season, and then again was like a top 4 defenseman for them in the playoffs, and they decided, nope, can't build around that guy. 6'4", 220 pounds, moves as well as any defenseman in the league. Definitely not somebody that we should.
And then 4 months later, they're like, hey, we need a puck-moving defenseman, and we need a top 6 forward. None of these guys that we gave money to worked out for us.
Didn't we used to have one of these? Oh, wait.
Who
Dang
was it? Stan fires anybody that brings that up.
T-Bone, what do you got?
Guys, believe it or not, Michael McGreevy will be in the Cardinals rotation by the time we get to the end of April.
I'm not believing this. Unless there's an injury, I don't see it happening.
I'm not believing it. It's so annoying.
True that.
I find this to be
Let's not bring
so
the show
much
down.
more frustrating than anything that they're doing on the position player side of things. Like, they could go with Michael Ciani in center field and never get Alec Burleson a start in the everyday lineup. And I would find that to be less annoying than what they're doing right now with Michael McGreevy. So I'm not believing it. I think he's more like mid-May, early June. It'll come down to injuries, but
Let's not bring down the show by talking about the Cardinals, you know?
Oh.
how do you see this?
Sorry. I already said mine.
You said, yeah.
I'm going to believe it. I think if he continues to pitch as well as he has in spring, I think at some point you just have to pull Mats and put him into the pen. Or they move to a 6-man. I wouldn't doubt that they would try that for a spurt as well.
I'd be surprised.
I think they will start him in the rotation by the time we get to the end of April. Mostly because I don't think Mats can pitch that well for this long.
All right, let's get into some of these from the text line and the YouTube chat. If you guys have any that you want to throw in on the YouTube chat for Believe It or Not, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line, and the YouTube chat is available for you at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. It's been busy today. It's been a fun day over in the YouTube graveyard
bring it down
chat.
with the Cardinals talk.
Believe it or not, guys, Wilson Contreras will lead the Cardinals in home runs in 2025.
Believe it. I'm not investing anything in Nolan Gorman leading this team in home runs until I see the consistency. I think the next competitor for it is Nolan Arenado, and I would lean more towards Wilson Contreras. Dedicated his whole offseason to bulking up. That upper body strength is real, so I think he's going to have 30+.
I'm believing it as well.
Yeah, I am as well. If it's not, Gorman's the only other guy that I think could beat him. I don't think there's anybody else on the roster that's going to hit more power than Contreras, and I'm kind of with you. I'm a little skeptical, especially from what we've seen early on from Gorman in spring training, so believe it.
Believe it or not, guys, Doug will tell teams, Doug Armstrong, that he's no longer listening on Shin. That comes from the 972.
I thought you were talking about Doug from TMA for a minute.
I don't think
I did too. That's why I was like, oh, wait a second, what?
It's like, what's Doug
He'll
doing on
probably
TMA?
tell him. He'll probably tell him. I don't think he's going to tell anybody anything. If I'm Doug Armstrong, I'm going to keep the phone lines open because somebody could call and offer me the wildest trade, and then I have to go to the captain and at least present it to him. And you know what? If he says no, he says no. But you're never going to turn those phones off if you're Doug Armstrong.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe it. If you were a, contender or top 3 in the division, then yeah, I think then you make that call and say, hey, we're not taking offers on Chen. You can go ahead and just save the minutes if that's even a thing anymore when you make calls. I think that though you're not in the playoff picture and you're a fringe playoff team, you still have to listen in case you do get that one offer that you just cannot decline.
I'm going to love it in the presser tomorrow after the trade deadline when Doug's like, yeah, we were never taking calls on Preach. It's like, okay, Doug.
Yeah, sure you were.
Okay, tough guy.
All right, last one here, guys. Believe it or not, Illinois will end up with a better seed in the NCAA tournament than Missouri.
Oh, not.
Dude, this is going to be really close.
Dude, your boys.
Yeah,
They forget
I
how to
understand
kid.
your concerns.
They forget
I'm
how to
actually
box out.
really thankful to the Blues for winning last night and making this show what it is.
Hell yeah.
Because otherwise we would have spent a decent amount of time on my Tigers. They are in trouble. They don't play defense.
They don't know how to box out.
Yeah, they don't play defense. They don't fight for 50-50 balls, and they don't rebound.
I heard soft. That's what I heard.
That's how they've been playing.
Oh.
It's so
They're
weird.
like soft serve in the paint.
It's since that Alabama game. It's as if they learned all of the wrong lessons from that game. They beat Alabama by just running up and down the court and putting up, I think it was like 95 points, 97 points or whatever it was in that game. And since then, they've played every game as if it's that game all over again. Dude, you were on fire from the field. It's so hard to win that way consistently. You have to be like the best offense in college basketball every single night to win that way. And what they've done since is not win a whole lot because they're playing that way. So, to answer the question directly, I'm leaning towards believing it. Because Missouri, if they lose on Saturday, they very well could lose in the first round of the SEC tournament, and I'm not even sure that's necessarily a bad thing for them. They need to figure their stuff out. They need a mental reset right now. I'll say believe it. I think Illinois ends up with a slightly better seed than Missouri.
Another year.
It would require Illinois to win tomorrow or Saturday.
Another year where an Ivy League team takes down Mizzou. How pitiful.
No
Mizzou's
kidding.
looking
At
like
least we've
a
never done
6
that.
seed right now.
Ugh.
Yeah. I'll see. And that's why, I don't believe this because I think Illinois is going to be a 7. I think they're kind of locked into a 7 seed, and I don't think they're going to move up. I don't think they're moving down. I don't know if Missouri's going to fall past them to that 7-8 range. I think they can fall to 6.
It's possible both end up on the 6 line.
Yeah, but I still think Missouri's going to have the higher seed.
All right. That's what we've got for you today for Believe It or Not. In 15 minutes, we'll hit the rewind on this show. If you guys have missed anything, be sure to check it out on the podcast page after the show today. But coming up next, we continue our countdown of the 20 most important Cardinals for the 2025 season with number 17 on our list, a guy that we weren't even sure was going to make the opening day roster last year. And next year, he might take one of the most important roles on for this organization. We'll tell you who that is next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here, the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues beat the Kings in a shootout last night, 3-2. They'll be back in action tomorrow night as they visit the Anaheim Ducks. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 8 o'clock with Alex Ferrario, then puck drop at 9 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. NHL trade deadline is tomorrow at 2 o'clock. If we get any updates on the St. Louis Blues, be sure to pass them along throughout the day, today and tomorrow here on your home, the Blues 101 ESPN. Cardinals in spring action right now as they are taking on the Washington Nationals, and they trail 4-1 in the top of the sixth. The Sports Update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, independent American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning dealer.
It's what it sounded like on FanDuel Sports Midwest last year, as it sounds like Chip Carey was going through it with his voice.
I get that, buddy. I was having that last night.
Ryan Fernandez is indeed coming in at number 17 on our list of the 20 most important players for the 2025 season. Alex, this is not something I was expecting to have us do, is talk about Ryan Fernandez on our list this time last year. He certainly wasn't a part of it because we didn't even know if he was going to make the opening day roster. He was somebody that was like, okay, well, I can see why you're interested in him, but we'll see where this thing goes. He was at number 13 on my list, 14 on Alex's list. T-Bone was the one that dragged him up the rear. He was at 16 on T-Bone's list. Overall, you average it out based on the points. He ended up at 17 on our overall list. The reason why I'm so high on Ryan Fernandez and his importance, Alex, is because, man, if not him, then who as the closer in 2026? He was great for you last year. Finished with a 3.5 ERA through 67 innings for you as well. I think we underestimate how many innings he was able to eat, and nothing about it was fluky. The guy has really good strikeout numbers, 25%. Yeah, he walks a little bit more than you would like when it comes to the batters faced, but he's got the strikeout stuff to be able to make up for that. You need him to be great this year. Not good, great, in order to feel good about where you're at with your closer situation going into 2026. So that was my case as to why he was so high on my list. Alex, how do you feel about Ryan Fernandez heading into this season?
Yeah, I second everything that you say, and I'll add one more piece to it. This season, because that's kind of how I tried to balance this list with the intent of trying to compete this year, but also the future, you don't have a setup man. You got to have somebody who can replace Andrew Kittredge from last year. You don't have that setup man. And the back and forth of, like, is Matthew Liberatore a bullpen arm or is he going to get stretched out? I don't trust JoJo Romero or John King. You need a setup man. You need to get a guy who can get to Ryan Helsley, and that's Ryan Fernandez. And I think if Fernandez has success, it pushes the Cardinals more to trade Ryan Helsley at the deadline, and maybe sooner if a team has an injury with their closer. But if Ryan Fernandez can emerge as a guy who can be a closer for you or a setup man this year, man, that makes the Cardinals a perfect team to sell high on Ryan Helsley and get a package in return.
Yeah, the reason I was just a little bit lower on my list, I mean, I second everything that you guys have said. Look, when you're talking about winning in the here and now for 2025, which I did put into my consideration on my list, he's like the lone guy that I kind of trust as a setup man. But the reason that he came in a little bit lower on mine is when you think both in the long term for a bullpen arm, it's just hard to project how these guys play in the long term. Like, I just went back and looked like 4 years ago who were like the top holds leaders. Guys, remember Genesis Cabrera, Giovanni Gallegos? Yeah, they're not in baseball anymore.
Yeah, so Gallegos is in the Dodgers, so he's going to be awesome.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, well, damn. But I look at that, and that's why I go, okay, so it's hard to project that as him as being like a critical young piece that you got to have answers on that leads to success in the long term. And also just in the short term, bullpen arms regular season, I don't value them as much, though they do need someone to help set things up for Ryan Helsley. If he doesn't work out, they have a bunch of other options that they can try and churn through. I don't know if it will work or won't, but they have other options they can try.
Yeah, they can try, but then you end up in the eighth inning and you're trying these guys and you lose games because of it. That's the fear. And most of the guys that you'd be interested in going into that spot are lefties. And he's one of the very few right-handed relievers other than Ryan Helsley that are currently on the roster, have the stuff that plays up in the late innings and can get you out of a jam. So for me, for all of those reasons and so many more, this is a guy that has to be up there on your list of the most important Cardinals for the upcoming season. And, like, frankly, his stuff plays, man. This guy's got real stuff. You mentioned Genesis Cabrera. Whether it's Genesis Cabrera or JoJo Romero or Giovanni Gallegos or a dozen other guys. Man, relievers come from anywhere and everywhere. You never know when they're going to click, how it's going to click, or why it's going to click. But it clicked. Something worked last year for Ryan Fernandez. They unlocked something in his arsenal and made him into a really damn good reliever. He's also a guy that, man, you look at it, he saved a couple of games, finished a few others. He's somebody that it doesn't feel as though the moment is too big for him. And that is something that you just don't know until they get into those spots. So I trust him. I trust him in a big spot. It's one season. It's a small sample size thus far. He was great during that season. That's the other reason why I view him as being so important for this upcoming year, is to get more returns on that. I've seen position player-wise, the Cardinals have had a lot of dudes come in, have a good season, and then it's that second year where things spiral on them. I want to see more of that for Fernandez going into 2025. So number 17 on our list of the 20 most important Cardinals for 2025 is Ryan Fernandez. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we're going to get into our BK and Ferrario, put a bow on this thing with everything we've discussed so far when it comes to the St. Louis Blues and their plans for the deadline. We're about 24 hours out. We'll give you our thoughts next here on 101 ESPN. I think today's been one of the best shows that we've done in years. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Blues won last night. They have gone 7-2-2 in their last 11 games. They're making a believer out of all of us. All of us said in the open today, and you can check that out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Shea Fedor Company.
If you go over to the podcast page after the show today, you'll hear what our open was, which is, hey, you can't break this up. There's no reason to do so. The Blues have given you every reason to believe in them as a real threat to make it to the playoffs. See this thing through. I think they should even add to it. You've mentioned Jared McCann's name a number of times. Alex, he's somebody that I would be interested in them going out and acquiring. Former 40-goal scorer, now more of a 25-goal scorer. But whether it's him or somebody else that you think can fill in on that third line as a center for you, that's what I would like to see Doug Armstrong do in the next 24 hours. The Blues have earned that right. The players have dictated that you try to invest in this team, not tear from it. How are you feeling after what we've seen in their last 11 games, Alex?
I'm feeling great. I second what Mike McKenna told us this past Friday. He said the Blues are better than the Calgary Flames, they're better than the Utah Hockey Club, and they're better than the Vancouver Canucks. Jeff Marek told us that. I always divert to goaltender. You've got the best goaltender in the NHL, or second best in terms of save percentage since his return from the Four Nations break. Every area that this Blues team has right now that should be in the conversation of being a playoff team, they've got. And so to me, I add to that. I was looking at what the Blues did back in 2019 when they brought in Del Zotto, because Army always says, like, the team dictates what we do. Right before that, they went on that 11-game win streak. Now, they didn't add much. They brought in Michael Del Zotto, but that
don't
team...
win the cup without him.
That's true. You're right. He played like 5 games. But look, that team had everything. They were strong in every area. They didn't have a weakness, and they were playing that way. They needed depth. This team, although they do need some depth, I do think there's a weak spot, and it's that third line. And again, no shot at Sundqvist or Matthew Joseph, but if you can upgrade over one of those two and have them as a piece that can come in and out of the lineup when you need a just different vibe to it, that's what I'd be looking at if I'm Doug Armstrong. And frankly, I don't care about this first-round pick this year. If I'm not drafting in the top 10, it does nothing for me. So I'd be using that as a weapon to go get something to help my team.
And you can't protect it. That's the other thing. You can always protect that first-round pick and say, if we do end up falling out of this thing and we end up drafting in the top 10, which I don't think is likely, but if you did, you would get that pick this year, and then it would just transfer over to the 2026 draft, which is not ideal, but you expect the team to be even better next season, so it shouldn't be too much of a worry for you. That would be the route that I would like to see them go. Now, you don't have to do that. Like, if Luke Cunnin is the option that you're going to go after, you're not trading a first-round pick for him. But there are guys on the spectrum from the top to the bottom of what you could potentially add to improve this roster. I think Cunnin is probably at the bottom of that list. McCann is probably at or near the top of that list. And then there are probably 3 to 5 different players that could fit somewhere in between.
Right now you're drafting, if the draft were to happen tomorrow, season's over, you'd be drafting 13th overall in the NHL. And to me, that doesn't do anything. To me, a 13th overall pick is a guy who can help you 3 years from now. Look at Jaden Schwartz and Vladimir Tarasenko. They were drafted 13th and 16th. They didn't help you for 3+ years.
The value of that pick potentially is what you could use it to acquire in the offseason. I think that's more the opportunity cost here than the actual player that you would select there. But if you're getting somebody like a Jared McCann with that pick, he is somebody that can be around for the next couple of years and continue to help you in that way. So
I just think that pick is less useful at the draft because teams know where you're drafting. Right now, the threat of being a 11th overall pick is there. If you top 10 protect it, a team could look at them and say, I don't think they're that good. They'll fall out and we get 11th overall pick.
It's the old Family Guy thing, right?
Yeah.
You can have a boat or you can have a mystery box. A mystery box could even be a boat. And that's where the Blues
Always
are
take
at.
the mystery box.
At the deadline, these picks are unknowns. Once you get to the offseason, we've seen this before. Doug Armstrong had those 3 first-round picks in all offseason. Going into the day of the draft, you guys were there. Everybody believed there's no chance Army's going to make all 3 of these first-round selections. No chance of it. And guess what happened? He couldn't find a deal, so he had to end up selecting 3 players in the first round.
Yep, we were on Army watch, too. T-Bone was watching him like a hawk every time he stood up to go to the bathroom.
He tried. He wanted to make a move with those picks, just nobody ended up making the deal. So it's harder to make those moves, I think, than people give it credit for. Maybe that changes this offseason with the cap flexibility that exists compared to previous offseasons, but there's no guarantee. When you have a move and you've got a player that you think is worthy of that pick and you think he can fit into not just what you're doing right now, but future years, I think it's a move that you've got to at least consider if you're in Doug Armstrong's shoes.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only guy I'm willing to part with that first-round pick for, and maybe something else comes out, it would be McCann. And then I probably would top 10 protect it just to be on the safe side. But I like the idea of the addition because he can come in. If you want to put him on the wing to help in the top 6, kind of like what Joey was talking about when we talked to him today of, hey, they could probably use somebody that fits into the top 6 on a wing. Okay, he can do that. You can bump Neighbors down. Or the other option, too, and like this is probably not how a GM should think, but when you think like worst case scenario, if Thomas did get hurt, now you've got a guy along with Braden Chen that can help you up the middle to help really absorb that blow if something did happen to one of your centers. Sure, exactly.
You guys just stop.
If it's long,
I know, but you got to think like
if
this.
it's long term, you're bleeped.
Yeah, that's the reality. And that's what I'm talking about. But if it's a short-term injury, now you have more center depth too, and a guy that can really fit in as a top 6 center if necessary.
Anywhere, right? If you had any kind of an issue, he can fit in those spots. I think I would not bump Jake Neighbors down for him. My move would just be if I'm getting Jared McCann, I'm putting him as my third line center. Sonny is bumping out or like in and out of the lineup on that fourth line. You kind of
it's Sonny and Joseph. It's a revolving door.
Or it's Sonny and Foxa.
You wanted to take Walker out again, didn't you?
No, Sonny and Foxa. I would have them like when you do the back-to-backs. One plays one night,
I get what you're saying.
The other night.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
You know, and I would just keep them healthy, keep them fresh down the stretch. Yeah, that would be the way that I would operate. I think Joseph's played too well to come out of the lineup right now.
Well, that's the hard part of this. Like you do have to weigh, and it was a great quote by Chris Pronger yesterday for you guys. You do have to weigh how you disrupt the chemistry because your team is playing well right now. If you bring somebody in, does that disrupt it a little bit? Because everybody loves Oscar Sundqvist. If you're telling this team that they're taking him out of the lineup, what does that do? So it's not an easy decision by Doug Armstrong because more so than, being good for the next 3 years, like I think the priority right now is getting to the playoffs if you were to ask the ownership group. So that's where he's at, and he's got to find the right way to surgically help that team.
How have you felt about the prices so far, Alex, compared to what we were expecting?
I think they're low. I think they're a lot lower than I was expecting. Now, I haven't seen a top 6 winger or forward get traded, nor have I seen a top 4 defenseman
Riley
get moved.
Smith's probably close to that.
Maybe. I think he's like a third liner, but I mean, that's probably the most expensive player that I've seen.
They did give
moved.
up a former first-round pick in that trade, by the way.
Yeah.
I mentioned it was a third-round pick for Riley Smith. They also gave up a prospect that was a former first-rounder.
And Vegas basically says, like, bleep. I think I saw somebody say that since Vegas has been a team in the National Hockey League, only one player has played for the Vegas Golden Knights that was one of their first-round picks. And it's a guy that they drafted this past year, Trevor Connolly. So, like, that's where they're at right now. But if that's probably the best piece that was traded, and frankly, I think that was a little bit of an overpay if you're the Vegas Golden Knights, but you try and win right now. I haven't seen anything, though.
Him, so it's not going to disrupt the chemistry.
And he comes right in, and he's a top 6 winger for them. I haven't seen anything, though, that's like, oh, yeah, that's going to be too expensive to make a move if you're Doug. But we haven't seen a lot of the big names get moved yet.
He's Alex Ferrario. That is Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll have Mike McKenna join us tomorrow as it is deadline day in the NHL. That'll take place right after our show. So the Fast Lane will have full coverage starting at 2 o'clock tomorrow, as they will coming up here in just a couple of moments. If you guys missed anything from the show today, I thought we had a really good one. We had Jeremy Rutherford, Joey Vitale, Jeff Marek, one of our favorite NHL insiders as well. You can check all of those interviews out on the podcast page today. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you're going to find it. The ESPN app is presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Center. So we'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.